Coffee, quick update. I'm getting news from inside Angostura that all, all PNM board members have finally let go with their toenails and their fingernails. All have now resigned as they should have done on April 29th to allow the new government to put people in place who believe in the policy and espouse the heart, soul, and care of Kamla Persad Bissessar. So Terence Barrett is now gone. Sterling Frost is now gone. And Franca Costello, you're now gone? I wonder if you wanted to stay there for a lifetime of roofing.
So just in case you didn't hear that, let me play that again.
Doubles and Coffee, quick update. I'm getting news from inside Angostura that all, all PNM board members have finally let go with their toenails and their fingernails. All have now resigned as they should have done on April 29th to allow the new government to put people in place who believe in the policy and espouse the heart, soul, and care of Kamla Persad Bissessar. So Terence Barrett is now gone. Sterling Frost is now gone. And Franca Costello, you're now gone? I wonder if you wanted to stay there for a lifetime of roofing.
Good evening, TNT family. Welcome back to your Logistical program on UNC USA. I have Mr. Suman Singh here with me, and some others may join us pretty soon. So, Mr. Singh,
Yes.
it's really funny what's going on down there. We see here what took place at Angostura, and the entire board, I believe, now has resigned. And we are seeing this bold-faced behavior, blatant bold-faced behavior from members who were appointed by the PNM. And they should have actually resigned as government was changed. And, we did predict we was going to have trouble. You told us that because you were experienced, you've been there, and you know the deal, and you know what you experienced previously. And PNM still conducts themselves like they own the country, and they do not they intend to give this government a hard time. We know that for a fact. And this is just one board that all of the members have resigned. And we're looking forward to resolving many of the other issues and getting the right people in place that would collaborate with the government. So, Mr. Singh, welcome back to Yellow Dakota UNC USA. I'd like to hear your input on this situation.
All right. Good evening, Gary. Good evening to our listening audience and all those who are joining us on the various social media platforms. You're welcome. Well, I must agree with you, Gary, with respect to the board resignations. That is something that should have been done when the government changed. It's a protocol, it's a procedure, and it is the correct thing to do. However, some board members felt that it is their right, to cling on to power. As far as I'm concerned, all overstays, as I would like to call them, and all decisions made after the 28th of April should be null and void, and there should be no remuneration for them after the 28th. I will be kind enough to give them 5 days to change over, collect their belongings, and wrap up with whatever they were doing. But no decisions in the new period when the new government started should be, be part of the process. For example, if they make a decision to hire someone or fire someone, that should not be tantamount to good governance because they were, in effect, not a board member under the new regime. So they have thus extended their stay. So, in my opinion, they should not receive any remuneration as well as no decision making.
But you know, the thing about it is that if by chance Mrs. Bisesa government wanted to give them a chance, they spoiled it because of their conduct. You
Yes,
know,
yes,
you know, I mean, she would, you know, she said she wasn't going to get rid of everybody. She was going to choose
correct.
who should stay and whatever. But just for what they did there, they actually spoiled their way permanently with her. You know, on that behavior there. But this is the conduct of the country, and you know, we just a few days ago, we heard about this woman who was on 9 boards, you know, and you know, I keep thinking about the amount of people in the country who needed a little change to get by in the country and could have used one of them boards to help them financially and so, but as a good purpose too, you know, make a big difference. You know, we have seen more stagnation in the country and non-productivity, non-production, I mean, throughout the country, you know, and for these people to be sitting there and just eating up the funds, you know, we really have to deal with this, you know, in a very effective and efficient way as quickly as possible.
I guess you're referring to the person at Flip Deco.
Yeah, yeah, and you see how many
Martin,
other
yeah.
boards there, and then we saw this guy here was on Central Bank, the board for Central
Yeah,
Bank, you
it
know,
was,
and they all feel that this is Eric Williams PNM country, you know, and you know, it belongs to the Costa Nostra. And listen to me, this is not the end of it. We're gonna see more. We're gonna see more issues as time goes by.
yes, and someone being on 9 board and then failing to resign from with the change of government, it has been something, that there was a lot of family and friends eat the food. That's how you could
Uh,
really
as
identify
usual,
that.
we have seen that for years with the police force, the military, and other places.
Yeah, but so she is doing the work of 8 other persons. So there should be 8 other in normal circumstances, with one person being in one board during that tenure. And if you are in 8 different boards, it means that you are bringing something to the table that nobody has.
But what is the level of performance there?
This is what I'm saying.
What is the
Okay.
level of service delivery there? But having a person, this is why I had mentioned that I didn't like the idea of having the Ministry of Works and Ministry of Transportation combined, because I felt the demand for attention was, you know, was far too much for one person, and that we should split these ministries, you know. And you know, and I also do appreciate what the honorable prime minister is splitting the Ministry of National Security into Defense and Homeland Security, because the issues in today's world, you know, is a lot more than, you know, previously dealt with, and we need more people and more attention to provide better service delivery to our people.
Yes, and beside that, it brings it, the justice and homeland security. They both, while they both um, are intertwined, the problem is so great for that what the country is facing right now with respect to crime, that it needs to be really pinpoint focused. So it is good that they have 2 ministries to tackle that head on from different fronts. Now, even one is labeled as defense and one is labeled as homeland security. It covers a wider range. You have 2 able ministers there, and it shows the UNC's commitment to really tackle crime heads on, and with their policies identified in the manifestos. Well, now it's the manifesto. I think they stand a very good chance of implementing some of the measures they indicated that they will be doing if elected. Now, I saw the opposition in Trinidad is they said they want to discuss in detail the FUL program. So stand your ground legislation and all that matters to crime at this point in time, it's up for debate, and it should be so. I agree with her, but let's get it over and thrash it out, because with the amount of legislation they had under the PNM and still it did not affect crime, let's see how it goes this time around, and if the performance of reducing crime is, or if it comes down to a more manageable level, then we can see and sharply say, well, your present government policies are working, while the PNM fail to show any sort of, even as minute gains in their quest to reduce crime. So it's good that they're having a debate, and let that be among the first things to be debated in the parliament.
But what good can the PNM bring to the table at this point after all what we've seen? We've seen Penny sit in Parliament and didn't make much of a contribution. I mean, all of them went against the UNC when they mentioned these things. They made mockery,
Yes.
and they think it was funny that criminals in our country are heavily armed, unlimited access, and law-abiding citizens. They kept struggling for protection. We could not get an effective response from the police. They shortchanged the police on resources, right? I mean, in every aspect, right? And then the structure and the way they maintain things is, I mean, there's no way that a commissioner of police with the best intention can deliver the services of approving so many FULs.
Well, it's
And this is, so we need a restructuring in that, but they did nothing. So the PNM have no moral authority.
That's right. So let them debate it. So, instead of opposing just for opposing sake, which is their mantra, we are in opposition. Okay. We, meaning the PNM, we are in opposition. Let's oppose. Whether it makes sense or not. And once that is thrashed out, they have no moral authority thereafter, because this will be a seal and sign and delivered, action to be implemented now by the partnership, by the UNC. So let's discuss it, hear what they have to say. A lot of it be rehashed things, which was already discussed at length. So I don't think they have anything new to bring to the table. So we can get out to that, get over that bit of discussion and debates quite quickly.
I am looking forward to the level of
Yeah,
hypocrisy coming from
correct.
them. I
I
am
want to
looking
see.
forward to that.
Yeah, let's see what new they can bring, and if it's the same old, you get rid of them for once and for all on this topic.
And and the thing that's mind-boggling to me is this recent judgment against the landlord who was
Yes.
trying to defend himself when the police and the government failed to protect them. So I mean, where the government is above all, right? The government could do what you want, fail to provide you, use all the money in the treasury, and don't provide the service, and the government is still righteous, right?
Yes. Well, you
And
see,
the judge failed in her discretion with this situation here, knowing the fact what this landlord was going through.
that's why there has to be something coordinated, Gary. It has to be, get the law association, the police, and all those parties concerned to, if you seriously want to put a dent to crime, this is the way to do it. That the punishment go with the crime. You can't have, it's for the same crime you have 10 years, punishment, and for the same crime you have a 3 years punishment. That variation should never exist. Once you do the crime, you do the stipulated time to serve based on the level of the crime. And that should be standard, a standard amount of years or something to that effect. You can't have that wide variation. So someone getting 15 years as their punishment and someone getting 3 or 4 years for the same crime, you know. So what basically what I'm saying is the same number of years punishment for the same type of crimes.
But in
And
this
that,
particular situation, there should be discretion, knowing
yes,
the fact that as a judge, you know what's been taking place in the country. You know for a fact the government failed. So law has to have to be applied with discretion. It cannot be robotic. We cannot enforce law in a robotic fashion. It has to be discretion when you enforce the law, when you apply the rules. And I think the judge was totally selfish and self-centered here in this judgment.
I
But we
agree.
are going to change a lot of those things. And we have people very uneasy because they know we're coming for the criminals. They know for a fact that we come in for the criminals and we're going to deal with them severely. And a person should always, this is not rocket science for a person to have the right to defend themselves in their home, in their business, knowing what has happened in the country for the last 10 years and beyond that. In fact, it's about 20 years or more that we have been dealing with a situation in the country. I believe it's after the coup, that things got a little chaotic, and it started to pick up, these kind of crimes started to pick up going forward. And so that's what I've been told. And but within at least the last, especially under Mr. Patrick Manning administration, there we saw things getting out of hand. In fact, in 2007, I remember a family got was close to the election time, just maybe a month before the election or so. A family in Las Lomas, their home was invaded, they got robbed, brutalized, and a lot of things took place there. But I'm just wondering, where's the voice of our law association and our justice, I mean, you know
The
organization in
police.
the country, the ministry there. But now we have a ministry of justice there, but the law association and all these high paid judges and lawyers, I mean, I feel like they're totally, in my opinion, totally self-centered people.
And immune from all of these things, This
They're on
is
a different planet, man. Something is
they're
wrong.
too, they're too aloof, too aloof of what the pains and the troubles of the ordinary citizens of the land has to face up every day. Yes,
So we have a situation here where Mr. Maduro
yes,
is,
yes.
is stating that these people that came to his country came to Trinidad. Um, I don't know what kind of game is being played here. He could be right, could be wrong, but first, I'm very suspicious of the fact of why he, at this stage in the game, is making that kind of accusation.
I myself share that opinion. There's a lot of high-powered criminals from Trinidad and Tobago is in the article, but I don't know if we have that high-powered level of terrorists and so on that goes into other countries to perform high criminality, high case or high-profile criminality cases. I
But it's
don't.
usually the other way around. They
I
come
know
from
that's what I'm
Venezuela
saying.
here. So what
I,
kind of game is Maduro up to?
he's trying. He's trying to. Oh, let me beef up the PNM government a little bit and support them in a way to, and at the same time downplay the current government and say, hey, what big news? Trini terrorists are invading Venezuela, and they linking up with some of the Colombian terrorists to bring turmoil to Venezuela. Just PR backup bullshit, really, in simple language.
And we dealt with them,
Yes,
very
yes.
straight and upfront, in this situation here. And
He's
yeah, go ahead.
He's totally irrelevant at this point in time. Maduro, that is. He was collecting his money from the PNM all this time while they were there, the millions every month for the Dragon Gas deal. So he's now experiencing no cash flow on his side. So he's pretty peeved about that and trying to make a case now of, sell something imaginary against Trinidad and Tobago. That's basically what he is doing. So it's just, in my opinion, other farcical things. I'm trying to get some coverage in newspaper, but you know what's going to happen. The local media is going to jump on that and see, this is what is happening, exactly what is it. They will tend to make people feel that is true, what Maduro is saying, in support of the previous government. So,
Like we said in Trinidad, he pulling a 619 there.
Pulling a 619, yeah. That's exactly my take on it. Yeah.
So I saw the ruling with Judge Marcia Caesar
Yes.
and the Privy Council, and that is I was trying to load the picture, but it has a little issue here with it.
Is that the one with
Evidence.
Israel Khan?
Yeah, well, I saw Israel Khan protesting against the Chief Justice, and he has a right at this point here, because I mean this is more evidence that the fact that, in my opinion, that the Chief Justice acted with some kind of political influence from behind the scenes, that he was coerced and acted unjustly here to Judge Marcia.
And this is not the first time, by the way.
Not the first time. Not the first time.
It's not the first time.
So Mr. Khan, I was unable to download the video, but Mr. Khan is calling for his removal, and I think he is within the right to do so.
Yes, and being a senior states counsel lends credence to what he's asking. He totally abided by the judgment of the Privy Council, and he explained what this is all about, that it was a wrongful decision from day one. But yet the government expanded funds, because it's not their money, it's the citizens' money. And this is what gets me. You're going to lose a case. You have no grounds for the case. Yet because it's citizens' money, it's okay to go ahead and spend it and pay these high-priced lawyers in the UK to do your bidding for you. But they have to have legislation in effect for that as well. And any of these witch hunt representation, or these, petty offenses which you're going to take it to the highest courts, you should pay that from your pocket first. And then if you win, then you get, the state funding for it, because they went through billions of dollars in Agari, billions of dollars as he spent on briefs. And how many cases that the PNM have won over the past 10 years to justify that high expenditure. It's in everything. It's always the ROI, the return on your investment. And if you're spending 1 billion and more, and your income is just 50 million, then you are wasting time, because the money is not yours. It's taxpayers' money you're wasting. But if the money is theirs and it's coming out of your pocket, people will think twice. All these trivial cases which they had no grounds, on no legal grounds really, to challenge these things with the expectation of winning, it was very, very, very minute. And yet they went ahead with these cases.
I mean, there's too much repeats in these kind of incidents here, and so we have to work to put an end to this. We cannot allow the PNM to have such a strong grip on our justice system, on our police, the various military, and the level of because for all those who rooting for the CCJ, in the Caribbean and to be in Trinidad, and how we should do this and do that and get rid of the PB Council. This is another reason
Why you shouldn't?
why it shouldn't happen. And I, for one, would support that idea if there was a just way of conducting business. But knowing the fact that the Caribbean loyalty to PNM for the history and that they would go against us, and we can't go in that direction as much as we would love to and work directly with the Caribbean. It is not a good idea, and this is more evidence again here for that.
Well, you just look at the let's say the amount of lawyers over the past 5 years who have become senior counsel, and see who has the designation of SC, and you will see it's a whole new bunch. A lot of them, so, some of them are very marginal. Some of them should not even be SC. They are now SC, and all SC means that you're commanding a much higher salary for your services. So if you're just a lawyer, you may get 5,000 for a case. Now that you're an SC, it's 15,000. That's your charges. So again, to provide revenue to the boys and the girls in the club.
Yeah,
So if
welcome to the party group, right?
yeah,
Welcome
if
to the
it's
party group.
justified, fine. There's no problem. But when you have much junior people, so many junior people who have not really built up a reputation to say, "We, you know what? I'm an active lawyer. I have won so many cases in this type of criminal law, civil law, and so on." You could justify, the moving over to SC. But when you have not done cases, or 3 or 4 cases, and you get then that designation of SC, it says that it becomes something very shallow, but not much credence to it. So that's why I said in the first instance, they have to have this coordinated approach for the crime and criminality. The police, the law association, the judicial system, the courts, and the other ministries have to be so involved. The
Complete restructuring. We have a lot of
complete,
restructuring.
and also the things like the DNA lab should be there, the forensic science center, and all these things, the night courts, separating the the crimes from, like motor vehicle crimes versus actual crimes. And what I mean is, do not lump all of them together in one shot, because that is what clogs up the system. When you have the guy with three joints of marijuana in the queue, you know. Oh, I have another call coming through. Sorry.
Yeah, man, this is totally unacceptable to see happening in the country, and we really have to focus on restructuring. It is absolutely necessary. I mean, for the length of years that these things are going on, I mean, we finally have another opportunity to deal with it, and it's something that we need to really focus on getting done. Welcome, Lindsay, bro. I see here all our listening audience. Thank you for joining us. If you have a suggestion, something that you would like us to, you know, to mention here, please let us know. Let's see what um get some
I'm back. Eh? That's,
yes some let's see here with yeah, go ahead, Mr. Singh. I'm just looking at the messages. You can go ahead and
yeah, as I was saying, it has to be a coordinated approach. All hands on decks, as the typical saying goes, and try to have all these things, the night courts, the traffic courts, and so on, to speed up some of the more trivial cases on, as I was saying, with three joints. Um, you kind of have these more petty or smaller crimes clogging up the system with more the serious crimes like home invasion and so on.
right. So well, I know the Ministry of Justice is going to be focusing
So what I'm
on
saying, yeah,
yeah, and restructuring a lot of these
it
things,
has to be, Gary, more streamlined, and make it into 5 or 6 different components, and get rid of some of the low-hanging fruits once and for all. If you have to do 24/7 courts, virtual courts at home, or just
Yeah,
get rid.
I don't see. First of all, I do not agree with locking up a man for a few pieces of weed and throwing him in jail and wasting
But he
time when
is
they
not.
full when we have people getting killed. I mean, if a guy's sitting on the corner smoking a joint and not bothering somebody, then leave him to hell alone, man. You have more important things to deal with. I mean, that is, you're wasting taxpayers' money when we have people invading people's homes, shooting and killing people on our streets. I mean, you need to spend your time. This is where I see the police force is trapped in time, and they are not up to par with the times that we are dealing with and with the situation. I mean, a lot of citizens have lost their lives. A lot of citizens have been brutalized because the ineffective performance of the TTPS, and this has to be dealt with. The TTPS has to be restructured and to be refocused on what is higher priority than
Correct.
wasting time with someone spitting on the sidewalk or so stupid things like that.
That's what I'm saying. It has to be more streamlined and completely segregated from minor to not so minor to serious offenses and so on. And you can really get rid of a lot of these cases rather than they joining the queue, you know, with about 15, close to 15,000
Yeah,
cases, the
when you
backlog.
add in members of the criminal gang to bring them in prison and to put them in first of all the prison itself. I mean, it is rather disgusting to see that people who were ready and ready to support the continuance of this kind of treatment towards their own people, to be treated in such an inhumane manner. Number one, a person is innocent until proven guilty, and you treat them, you show them in a place, 10 of them in one place. I mean, they not no proper facility, and all the money spent to national security, and we don't see value for money at all.
So again, it comes back to an integrated approach, as I was saying. You have these supporting institutions to back up the police. So when you have DNA evidence, for example, and you have forensic evidence, for example, and you have the eye in the sky, the drones and what have you, and all by the traffic lights, the cameras and so on, which are working. So it's coordinated, it's structured, and you show when you can catch criminals, and besides catching them, you can deal with them through a swift justice system. And that is what I'm saying. It has to be a coordinated approach, very structured, very meaningful, clearly defined, and separate the minor offenses from the more serious ones and so on. Unless you have that plan, and I'm sure with the new ministries there, the Justice and the Homeland Security. I'm sure they have the plan to start that process. As all comes down now with the HR, the human resources, which is the policemen in the main, to train and retrain some of these persons, or most of them really, to adapt with the new technology. And I think our police force is way behind in using technological aids to fight crime. That's why the detection rate is so low. If I know I can commit a crime and I have a 95% chance of getting away, hey, the odds are stronger in my favor. So I let me do as I please. You know, but the detection rate so poor. You know, I have a much better chance of getting away. So what is that telling me? And that is telling me, hey, it's crime it pays to do crime. Big time, because it's hardly likely they will catch me. And if they catch me, I just join the queue. I become the 16,000 range now. That is how much of them that are ahead of me, whose cases have to be solved before mine. So you see the mess we are in there.
I saw Assistant Commissioner of Police Wayne Meister warning about cautioning
Neighbor,
us about neighbors giving info on neighbors, encouraging and supporting criminal activity and home invasion there. And so
especially against the elderly.
yeah, and that's happening in the central area, and I know it could be happening in the rest of the country. And so this is a grave concern, for us too. And so the what we call the low hanging fruits is that the police needs to be on board with patrolling and applying every deterrent factor. And you can't deter anything if you're not out there patrolling and you're not responding effectively on when you get a call.
That's right.
So we need the basics. That is what I call the basics.
It goes
Um,
back to the integrated approach from the community policing, the various police clubs in the districts and so on. Unless you don't have this coordinated approach, anything can happen anytime. Your neighbors, they don't like you. Hey, look, there's an easy target next to me, to where I live. You guys can go ahead and invade that home. That's the way it is. But when you have the community knitted together through various organizations, like the various youth groups and so on, various clubs and associations and NGOs, there's a tendency to focus your attention on doing something good for the society. And once you're not engaged in any way, you have so much time in your hands, you can provide information to the detriment of society. And apparently, this is what Mr. Meister is hinting at, that neighbors are identifying soft targets for criminals to do their dirty work.
yeah, well, they're assisting and that's called aiding and abetting. And if you're caught,
So,
it is punishable by law and should be.
yeah, so one wonders whether the neighbors themselves are getting a cutback from everything else, you know. So this is the way people think. Normal, sane people will think like that. Hey, you know what? If I provide you with some information, I'll give you a soft target. What's in it for me? Little did they realize that, you may be next, or you may be the next target. So the whole approach has to be changed with our crime fighting strategies. And I think the time for talk and big talk has come to an end, and time to see more, results from their strategies and so on, which they're planning to implement. Yeah. So anything with the flooding and so on,
Well, I know I'm trying to pull up some files here. Is that our Minister of Local Government is still questioning about funds missing from the San Fernando Borough Corporation, and there's more money missing than maybe she have thought.
again, someone has to be held culpable for that, and we have to make examples out of these things. Once you have been identified and caught stealing public funds, there are things like, I will feel that if you're a worker, or you should get your pensions and so on, your gratuity, everything should be seized. Your punishment should be stiff, or stiffer than the regular society or the rest of the people in society, because you have been entrusted with that, responsibility.
Welcome, Dr. Rambo. I didn't see you there. Sorry about that.
Hey guys, how are you going? Sorry for
You sounding kind of low. I'm barely hearing you.
are you hearing me?
Slightly.
Yeah, check your mic. Check your mic.
Okay. Let's see.
On the volume in the
Right. Are you hearing me now? No?
Very soft. Very soft. We can barely hear you. I don't know what's going on.
Hear me better?
Yes, much better.
That
Right.
part is much better.
Right. I'm not sure what went on there.
Yeah,
So how you doing,
welcome.
Dr. Ramrup?
Much better. I was a bit under the weather for the last few days. I don't know. There seems to be a virus that is going about. Thank God it's not the COVID variant. We have to be careful.
The new COVID variant, they're warning people, it's big time in
Yes.
California and so on already. So,
Yeah. I am actually having to go to the US next month for a wedding, and I'm hoping everything settles down a bit because we're a bit scared to take baby. Baby's going up to Toronto next week. We have a Rotary International Conference in Calgary, so we're going to spend a few
okay.
days with the girls, and then we will all fly down to Calgary, spend a few days there, probably go to Banff, Lake Louise, and come back in.
That's a summer vacation. It's such a lovely site to visit. I've been there.
Yeah. Uh, uh,
I drove from Calgary down to Banff and so on. I have some relatives living up there. And but I went to Banff and some proper by Lake Louise and so on. Did
right.
some canoeing and things which I like to do in any case.
Yes.
It's very, very peaceful and quiet, and
Yeah.
it's a nice
Well,
time to enjoy for the summer.
yes. It'll be nice to take baby and see that have a nice time because my kids never went there. We went to once. We had a Rotary conference in Calgary many
Mm.
years ago. Um, so some of my friends are going up. I don't know if you know Dr. Eknath Misir,
Of course, right, my buddy man.
Suraj Dev Mangru.
Yes, I know all of them.
Suraj Dev is going as well. We had a road trip last time, and we all went on this trip. And one of the guys who went with us, he passed. So and his son passed recently, well, about a year ago. So we want to go on a memory lane. Hopefully, we'll catch up each other and talk about old times and reminisce a
Yeah.
bit in Calgary. Oh,
Nice down Calgary, Edmonton, and you drive up there.
yeah.
It's quite nice. This
I,
time
I,
it will be a little cold still.
I understand. Yeah. I
July,
heard,
August is perhaps the best time. End
yeah.
of July, beginning of August, because come September, you
Yeah.
start to get some snowfall
Yeah.
sometimes.
One of my
Yeah.
friends, he's a very senior person in the Department of Public Safety, Ministry of Public Safety. Well, the Department of Public Safety in Canada. Met him when I was on a Rotary, when I was on a ODPM stint many years ago. We developed a friendship because we developed the statement for the then Prime Minister on the what we call the Sendai strategy, which is the global international strategy for disaster risk reduction.
Mm.
So what they did is, I was talking to him a couple of nights ago. We had a Zoom meeting with some of the the contacts that I had at the time from the University of Oxford, from WHO, CDC, the Canadian Department of Public Health, and some of the other guys who we all met many years ago when I was in Geneva, and we were working on the metrics for the Sendai strategy to
Okay.
measure country performance in terms of implementing disaster risk reduction in all the member states of the United Nations. All 100 and at that time 176 countries had signed up to that Sendai agreement, including Trinidad and Tobago, because it was done during the year when I was CEO at the ODPM. So we were able to convince our government to align to that strategy. And he was telling me that they revised their pandemic influenza plan, and I indicated to him, well, we had a pandemic influenza plan in Trinidad that we had worked on in 2012 when I was in the ODPM. And that pandemic influenza plan, national pandemic influenza plan, was, of course, the Ministry of Health is the owner of that plan, but of course the plan is a national plan, and in that plan there were a number of key stakeholders that would play a part in the event of a pandemic. So it will be interesting, to know if I'm hoping that Dr. Bodo and his team, try to find out where that plan is and pull it out and see if that plan was actually used by the PNM when they did the COVID outbreak, when they managed COVID, which I doubt very much. I didn't see that plan table too much, but I'm hoping now that he is the minister and we have another doctor who is the minister, that they will take out that plan and give it to the key persons who will be able to monitor. There's a disaster section, a disaster team in the Ministry of Health, so that they are supposed to now roll out that plan, revise that plan, especially since we have two things. One, measles in Canada, and there's going to be a lot of summer traffic between Canada and here. And the second one is, of course, the new variant, which is, I understand, in Guyana. So I am hoping that that plan is reviewed, updated, and tabled, so that we can begin to show the PNM how the UNC goes about the business.
Well, I just pulled up, this new variant. Um, there will be a number of issues relating to it because, as far as the statistics go, for the month of May, there were 40,000 positive cases identified.
Yeah.
Mr. Singh and Dr. Ramov, I'm just wondering if Trump tariffs has something to do with these new variants reappearing. It appeared on the scene, on the world stage in the last era of Mr. Trump's presidency. So I'm just
Yeah,
wondering if that is being kicked out again to kind of send a message,
you never know. You never know. You never know. But
because I mean, I don't care what nobody say. I have the strong opinion that this uh, initial thing was constructed in a lab and unleashed on the world. I mean, and in fact, they were admitted here, in the U.S., and that wasn't really dealt with because the level of damages done by this COVID man-made pandemic, not nobody has really been held accountable with costs and damages and and all these things that took place. I mean, lives. I mean, what value do you put to lives and the level of destruction? And you saw which country got richer and benefit the most
Yeah.
out of goods and services.
Yeah. Well, one of
well,
the things that I mean, because of my networking, in 2015, it was 2014. We were working in a team in Geneva with some of the key stakeholders I just mentioned there, and I was invited across by WHO at the time. We had we had a meeting of WHO, the WHO team at Geneva for the development of that international strategy for disaster risk reduction called the Sendai strategy. And we had discussed, we sat down actually at the meeting, and there were some of the teams from Oxford, and they were saying that we were due for a pandemic, whether the virus was going to be manufactured by human beings or whether the virus would have evolved and mutated over time. In truth and in fact, the virus would have mutated over time, but whether or not a man, a human being, or human beings actually deliberately or accidentally release that virus into the world's environment, the global environment, it's going to be hard to say. I guess audited. I'm not sure if they would have found out and was just hiding it for whatever reason. But it's possibility. There are two possibilities. One is
Yeah.
it was man either man engineered or re-engineered. Obviously, the virus would have existed at some point as a natural virus, but whether it was
I am of the opinion that they took the
yeah.
natural and expand its capabilities.
Well,
And we know that.
that is a viable theory, and I think that is something that basically what I'm trying to say then is whatever the cause, whatever the eventuality of what happened, what is key to the management of any pandemic is the consequence. The consequence, as the military tends to talk a lot about consequence management. You see, so when that was released, it's how the global populations, how the global governments, how they manage the issue. And I think that it's fair to say that in 2021, 22, 2019, 2020, 2021, the world has so much, have evolved so much compared to the plague and to the Spanish flu, right? The bubonic plague, Spanish flu. The world has evolved so much in terms of science and AI and the information and knowledge management level that we have as a global population. I must say that the numbers of persons who have been recorded as dead, right? And of course, the numbers of persons who we are currently recording as having post COVID issues, either due to the vaccinations or due to the COVID itself, as we look at what is happening 5, 10, or 15 years after COVID and the new variants that are coming in and out, it's clear that it was managed much, 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 much better than it would have been managed if it were 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. So, I mean, I must say that in terms of how it was managed by most of the governments, now there are some governments like we were not sure, the reporting was not up to date. We were not sure some of the key measurables were not being presented to the population, and I think Trinidad and Tobago is one of them,
Yes, of course.
where some of the key indicators that a scientist would want to look at, an epidemiologist would want to look at, not the ones that the epidemiologists that were speaking to us was telling us. It is what we are talking about, other indicators. And one of the most simple indicators was
You mean
actually,
the PNMologists and them?
Yeah,
what,
that guy name, a good friend of mine.
yeah, one of the one of the key indicators would have been the death rate, the
Yes,
mortality rate, and the true mortality rate. And I indicated we talked about the garbage codes. That would have been one of the problems with garbage codes is that people would have been coding the death certificates wrongly, right? And that would have led to a poor understanding of the actual death rate due to COVID as such.
yes.
So I think that it's fair to say that now we do have the prospects of another pandemic. I think what Gary was talking about, I mean, in jest, in terms of the tariffs, is that I'm seeing some problems where there may be a decrease, and statistically, it's statistically significant that over the last month or two, there has been a significant reduction in the number of persons traveling to the United States for whatever reason. And I think that this obviously would reduce the spread of any variant that we would expect if the travel was high. So in a sense, maybe President Trump has maybe protecting the U.S. in a way because his borders are a little more difficult. And I see even the World Cup of soccer, right, that is supposed to be played in the United States as well.
Next year.
It is in danger of not happening because a number of the key teams are saying that they are going to be having problems coming into the United States because of visas and maybe past criminal records and whatever. You know what I mean? So there's going to be, I think there's going to be some problems there. I'm not sure. So in a sense, the statistics might be a bit skewed because lesser people might be coming there. But I know right now my friends in Europe, my friends in Australia, New Zealand, in Canada, they have already begun picking up their pandemic influenza plans, dusting the dust out of it now. They are now meeting with their key stakeholders because we have already forecasted that the virus will resurge, and maybe the tariffs and the travel problems that we're having to go into the United States might reduce that spread a bit because as you can well imagine, the hub United States is a very big hub when it comes to moving people all over the world, you know.
It's the
But
international marketplace. Everybody comes to New York to make
Yeah,
decisions.
the
yeah,
thing,
You know.
it's affecting the West Coast, California more than anything else. So
yeah,
maybe, just maybe, it's coming from somewhere else other than California. Could be the Far East or whoever, where travel is most popular.
yeah,
That's, California first, then it's going to spread on the various metropolitan areas within the US.
yeah,
So I don't know if that was the same pattern that happened the last time.
Well,
yeah,
there's the unleashing something in the atmosphere. It has a lot of capabilities of delivery. Let's keep
Because
that in mind, right?
if
We live in a technological world, and if someone wants to unleash it in the atmosphere, they can very well do so upon us. What we need to do in Trinidad is to organize ourselves uh, with our medical staff there for emergency response. In case of a pandemic, in case things get out of hand, like how the military we will go in the jungle and throw things up, and you could throw up a hospital. Well, we have certain buildings we have to have the resources to expand our capabilities should this become necessary. And I mean, like I was suggesting, utilize the high schools and stuff like that you had closed down and make it temporary quarantine area. Because it's pretty much set up, in a guarded area, and start but you have to have things in place
yeah,
uh, to move with it. And eventually, when we get our finances sorted out, we could probably move into that direction where
yeah.
we have resources in place. Dr.
Yeah,
Rambo.
so yeah, no, I agree, and what I would like to see, I mean, as I said, if I were in the ODPM at this point in time, and I mean, I'm talking right now, today, tomorrow, my team would have already begun getting the Ministry of Health, who is one of the key stakeholders within all the ODPM's what we call the emergency services functionalities, and since they would be leading that whole charge when it comes to a pandemic, you know, they would have already been asked to come and sit down with us, and they will have to bring the pandemic plan is, I think it was supposed to be posted on the ODPM's website. That pandemic influenza plan is supposed to be taken out. I am positive that plan has not been reviewed even during the COVID, and I think that is the strategic plan for what you're saying there, Gary. It has all the
Well, again,
policies
the,
and
the, the National
procedures.
Operations Center is key here because
Yes,
that's where you bring
yeah.
everybody,
No,
you
that
bring
that is,
everybody on
yeah.
board, and
Correct.
that's
So, I mean, you are plumb. You are actually, bang on target. And what you're talking about is the pandemic influenza plan, and that plan now has to come out. We have to sit down from the first letter in the beginning of the plan to the last one, and they're gonna have to. They should really go through it, tighten it up a bit. And as I said, since AI is now going to be what we call cross-cutting theme in almost everything that we do. And every programming that we, every policy and procedure
The
that we
forecasting
have.
should be much better, right? Because you have
Right.
AI to
Correct.
forecast.
Good. So I'm suggesting that that plan be tabled immediately. All the key stakeholders brought together for a physical meeting, right? The identification of all the key stakeholders and their roles and responsibilities. Tighten up the standard operating procedures that are required for all and every key stakeholder within that national response framework. That will include all the relevant stakeholders, which would include, as you just mentioned, the Ministry of Education when it comes to using some of the schools, the Ministry of Local Government when you're looking at graveyards and the use of the graveyards for burial sites and whatever. you know we have to talk about the pharmaceutical industry. So when we talk about that, Ministry of Health has certain responsibilities. The Ministry of Transport has a lot of responsibilities when it comes to certain issues as the movement of people, quarantine. The Civil Aviation Authority has to step up the vigilance of all airlines coming into Trinidad in terms of reporting, the development and upgrade of an app on the phone, which allows the ordinary citizenry, to report an incident right up to a clearinghouse, right, which would allow people to begin to identify the stepping up of the NOC to include an ODPM representative that includes 29 other emergency services functionalities, the upgrade of the NEOC, which is the ODPM's arm in the whole national response framework. So you don't have to have 29 people sitting down at an NOC meeting. That 29 people are represented by one ODPM representative in that meeting. It cuts the chaos down. It cuts the whole craziness that was occurring when I was about to leave in the system that was set up by the NOC at the time, where you had it was a duplication of work that was already done by an institution, right? And that was a recipe for chaos. You see, so um, the whole concept of operations of the NOC need to be reviewed. The NEOC NOC relationship, that is the ODPM into the NOC relationship, that has to be reviewed. The lead Ministry of Health, where they would have to bring their key persons on board. I think that even with the variants so close in Guyana, it's not to say that okay, we will wait until we get one. I think we have to be more proactive, and I think the ODPM at this point in time has to be more proactive in the mitigation and the prevention of the impact of a pandemic. All right, I think this is a necessary thing now. We don't wait until the case lands in Trinidad. We want to take before take us. You see,
And I mean, even though we have a change in government, the culturally we have that kind of mentality,
correct.
and things will operate more in a fet carnival fashion than
Yeah,
a militant strategic way of,
yeah,
of executing the
yeah,
mission there. And
correct.
we have to be retrained and reconditioned how to respond to emergency situation and not be jumping over each other heads and like you say repeating the process. Everything should be strategically laid out. And I like to see things practiced like how we practice a fire drill over here. I mean,
Yeah.
we practice
Well,
emergency uh, response and timing, and we try to time ourselves how we get out the building, and things like that. So I want to see things more organized. I want to see evidence of things more organized. I
Well,
know we
I
just
think
get into
that's Mr. Singh will know in education and
Oh,
in AI that if you create and you have a system and it's system based, it allows people who don't have a clue as to what is going on to actually tag on to the system.
yes,
It's like having a train line run into a particular community. All the communities, as you know, all over the world, they develop linear settlements along the train line. I mean,
yes,
you need
it's how it
coordination
happens.
in a state of panic. You need
Yeah.
coordination.
So it guides you. It allows people to fit into a system And zombies, and it allows like zombies to just get into that because they follow the tagline. They don't have to be educated, they don't have to be intelligent, they don't even have to be very, very, very smart. They just have to be able to understand that this is a system. So that is why a systems based approach, right, removes the ability for us to actually look at people. A people centered approach is good, but a systems based approach is a business approach that allows people to fit into that very simply. So, therefore, that is why I'm saying pull out the national response framework, pull out the national pandemic influenza plan, update and upgrade the plan, and bring it up to contemporary standards when it comes to all the relevant key standard operating procedures. Get all the key stakeholders and bring them in. Start to drill it now before the case arrives, so
Exactly.
that when the case
Exactly.
arrives, you are say, we are ready to
Exactly
go,
what you
brother.
have to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know exactly what you have to do. That's why, documentation,
But you know,
not
if you don't practice it, it doesn't sink in. We are human beings, and practicing is what really gets us, into routine.
yeah, it comes back to the same thing, enterprise risk management.
Correct. I mean, I keep saying it, and it's all of, I mean, this was, you know, it's amazing how the human anatomy, the human body physiology, right? And if you, I mean, there are a lot of doctors who go through medical school, right? And they read the books and they're so brilliant they pass the exams. You know what I mean? But there are some people who actually study and actually get an understanding of the basic physiology, right, and anatomy. And the reason why we have adverse events and negligence and all of these things all over the world is that some of these physicians, because they will follow the norm and do what they can do because of what they learned by rote, you see, it is
Yeah,
easier,
you can't be robotic,
right?
because we have to understand the human
Right,
body.
and
What will work
yes,
for Dr. Ramble would not work for Gary.
right, and that is what I'm trying to say. When they actually get a problem that is at variance or is what we call an outlier. And I'm sure
Mhm.
Mr. Singh understands what I'm
That's
talking
that's
about.
that's the
Right?
language of AI
Right.
outlier.
Right. When they get an outlier from that normal graph that we have, is that they get into trouble because they cannot adapt. They cannot very quickly maneuver. And that's what I'm saying as a surgeon, especially. You see, as a doctor, you might be only when you're resuscitating somebody, you don't have much time to jiggle around the drugs. So experience is very important, life and death. But when you're a surgeon like me, and you're actually within a human being and you cut open them and you're inside, you don't have much of a leeway to say, oh my God, I need a 45 hip module, and I only have a 43 in the theater. Where will I get a 45? Do I close up the person and go looking for it? So you have to have all of that before. You understand? So
Yeah.
you have to have you have to have a plan. You have to have an understanding that you just can't go and close up a person and say, okay, let me go down to the store and get a 45 because I thought it was a 45. Sorry, a 44 or 43. You understand? Size hip. So this is what it has trained us over 30 years of being a surgeon, in that you tend to be very incisive in your thinking, and if you learned what you were doing at the time, right? You would have an idea of how to maneuver in a space where it's a new space, a space that is what happens. I mean, that's how the human being evolved. It was, if we had normal things going on all the time, we probably as a species would have been stuck. But it's because of changes, because of mutations, because of things that happen, because of pathology, because of infections, we develop antibiotics. Because of tumors, we develop cancer drugs. You see, you understand? So it is how we evolved as human beings. So risk management is how the human species survived. It is inherent, innate mechanism that is because of two
And we have to learn to
glands.
utilize this computer technology and how to
Yeah,
make a diagnosis.
yeah.
I mean,
It's how when you look at your children when they were going to school, when they were young, and you saw them coming into your house, and you would know the sick ones. You would know which one is not looking well. It was not something you had to be a doctor to identify. What caused all of this? This is because of two glands in the middle of your brain called the amygdala, which are basically your risk managers. I see. So if you adapt that to a business process, if you adapt that to institutional process, you'll find that stronger institutions, stronger businesses, businesses that are more resilient, are businesses that actually assess their risk on an ongoing basis. And this is what enterprise risk management is all about. And this is what we need to be pushing into all our government systems. All of our ministers need to put that sort of
Correct.
concept
That is
into their governance,
that's
so that
exactly the
it
point. That is
makes it it makes it you have legacy. You create now a change, so that when you go as a minister, or a parliamentary secretary or prime minister, you say, you know what, after 5 years, what, we have actually done something substantial, but not a building, not just a road, but you know what it is, something deeper. You have actually created a countrywide risk focused environment.
That is why, Doc, what you say is quite correct. This is the thing about data. The data does not lie.
Correct.
And once we start to collect data and we start to manipulate the data and we structure our data, we can easily feed it into an algorithmic model,
Yes.
and get outputs that we may not even be seen with the naked eyes, or just will not be contemplated upon.
So
You see that?
I have a question, Doc.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, welcome Danica from Watertown, Point Harbor, New York. We have a sister from living upstate New York there. Doc, I have a question. I am under the impression, right, that and I just want to verify this, that you take a person blood work and you try the medicine to see the reaction of it in a lab, and that should be able to be analyzed and uploaded, in the sense that you could use the AI to play around with the body chemistry and the medication to see if it is compatible.
I think I can answer that question for you in detail. What happened? I had the opportunity to work with AI in healthcare and associated with Mount Sinai here. And AI is assisting uh, basically cardiologists and neurologists to such an extent that they are first reading the MRI for you, and after your operations or what have you, they are also recommending which is the medication or which are the medications you should use. It's not one medication with a paintbrush, not the same Panadol right through. Whether you are
Yeah,
is
you can't go that way, because, like I said, people are chemically designed different.
differently, so it will
That's how we
tell
have
you.
different blood type.
Will tell you, based on your circumstances from this X-ray and from the operation you just had, or whatever the stents or aneurysms and so on, this is the best medication for you based on all your blood tests and your previous history and your records and so what your complaints are and this sort of thing. So they do a full, of course, the AI will analyze all these things in a fraction of a second to tell
Yeah.
you the
Yes.
prescriptive medication to take.
Yeah, I agree. And Gary, in direct response to your question, the answer is yes. To an extent, it depends obviously on the data that
But
are
it has to be
programmed.
tested in a lab and uploaded,
Yeah.
right? That
Well,
so,
the thing about it is that
so I'm
just
helping to
blood,
making the diagnosis.
yeah, just blood per se would only give you a certain amount of data in terms of what the algorithms would use to help the AI, to help determine what is the most appropriate treatment in terms of probability. It's all about probabilities, as you know.
Yes.
So what happened is that, because you are going to be feeding that information, the more you feed, not just about the blood, but about the patient, but about his genetics, because his family history, his past medical history, his environment of care, where he worked before, his family. What I'm trying to say then is not just about the blood, so that when you program and you say, well, okay, this guy has had a family history of all his male, grandfather, his father, his great grandfather, all of them died at 50 years with heart disease. You know what I mean? So all of these things, when you put that into the system, right, it allows the AI to make better decisions because it has more data. It has more data,
Yeah, you
right,
have to
for the
feed the
for
data in.
all the necessary permutations and combinations. So the blood is one thing. Yes, if you get blood from a person or his blood works and whatever, and you put it in, the AI will give you at least a very good probability of what his treatment choices would be. However, if you add other things to that,
Correct.
about the patient, about his family, about his relative, I
Yeah.
mean, we are using that now in crime fighting, where we're using open source DNA, right? Where we can actually go now and follow your
Yes.
family
Yeah.
history, about all your DNA trees, and actually, we actually are seeing people get arrested many years after a crime, not even by taking DNA samples in the police station, but by using DNA coming from their family many, many, many years ago in terms of their ancestry. So this is the beauty about what AI can bring to the table, right? Early, because once you start plugging in that information, right? So herein lies the challenge. Herein lies the nexus of the next 10 to 15 years. It's really a nexus. There is a lovely book by Yuval Harari. He wrote a couple of good books. He's a historian, and a Jewish historian, and his new book is Nexus, which is a very good book. His last book was 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. Two good books, and it's a good read, Sumant. I don't know if you ever read it, but it gives a very good idea of what's going to be happening in the next few years when it comes to AI and how AI can actually, how the need for example, doctors, for example, to say, well, look, go and do your medicine, come out with your MBBS, you come into the hospitals in Trinidad and Tobago, you don't even have jobs, right? You do your internship, and after that, you're looking for a job because there's no jobs. There's just no jobs. So now you begin to. We talked about putting them on the ambulances, right? We talked about putting them in the forensics training center. We talked about um, putting them in AI programming. I mean, it's a sad thing to say that you have a doctor who has an MBBS now, but the medical degree is now just an entry degree, unfortunately. And what we are saying now is we want you now to come in now, and probably you could spend another maybe year or two. I don't know, Smart, how long, but now you have to now program so that you would find that you are now be able to put more data into that system, so that the AI is able to better give a treatment plan for that patient, that
A
specific
better
patient.
output, because a better output with a
Yeah,
high degree of probability that is
yeah,
going to be 100, close to
yeah,
100% correct. Now,
correct.
the thing is that it's not only happening to healthcare; it's happening to
Of
basically
course, of course,
every
yes.
What
single.
kind of labs do we have in Trinidad right now? Research lab. What do we have? In Trinidad in reference to this.
Right. So the answer to that is that the 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 operations of most research R&D departments, right, in the private sector is much stronger than that in the public sector. There has not been much emphasis in any of the ministries, as far as I know. I left in 2016. Obviously, I wouldn't have an idea now over the last 10 years. But R&D programs in most of the ministries have not been very well populated. They have not been well resourced and linked. They're operating silos. We did a study with the UNDP. We brought in some consultants from one of the funding opportunities that we had when I was there in 2014, I think. And at the Cape Park Hotel, I remember we sat for 3 or 4 days and we did an analysis of what was happening with data in Trinidad and Tobago for exactly the same discussion we're having now. We did this. I was one of the persons who chaired the workshop. And we came up with the results that showed that Trinidad and Tobago had data, good collection, but they were operating in silos. And we were not able to use that data efficiently. One of the best set of data that we have, warehouse that of data that we have is from the Water Resources Agency, WASA, as well. In other words, then WASA and the Water Resources Agency have some fantastic data when it comes to the entire country. Yeah? It was one of the best set of data they had at the time that when we looked at it, as the expert had come in to look at the use of data. But the fact that it wasn't shared and it wasn't being used by other persons, right? And because of a lot of things, legal issues,
That,
bureaucratic issues,
that's the issue.
cultural issues,
Legislation, there's no legislation to
yes,
ensure that that data can be shared.
right.
I
And
have the
then of
same problem with
yeah,
immigration.
yeah,
You know,
and no standardization as to how and what methodologies that they are using to even store it. I'm talking about even simple databases, how they're storing the data, right? In fact, some people using a Excel type, database. Some using a different, I mean, so really and truly, the use of ArcGIS, for example, by certain ministries and another GIS system by other ministries. So, in other words, then it was confusion, and there was no standardization. So I thought that over the last 10 years there was a ministry that dealt with digitization and standardization of data and whatever, that we would have been seeing some real outputs when it comes and outcomes even when it came to the use of data and the standardization of data collected, data warehousing, data sharing, data transfer. And it seems that we still seem to be operating in silos, and therefore R&D departments are suffering, and that is why the Ministry of Planning and Development, right, which was run by Miss Penny Beckles, uh, I understand, and I was hoping that that ministry would have been able to oversee and try to collect and try to use and try to standardize that using the Ministry of Digitization, all right, at that time over the last 10 years. And on R&D departments would be more easily linked, more able to transfer data, less chaos, right? More sharing, less silos, more standardization. So that now that you come into power now in 2025, you should have on your plate something that you could use. And I am not sure. I'm hoping that when I get into ODPM, if I ever do, in the next few months, I would be able to see for myself what is being done.
well, Doc, I don't think you should raise up your hopes too high, because very, very, very little was done, because I have, someone working inside that whole project there in Trinidad, and it's a waste of time. I keep on telling him that the standard for collecting data is called CSV, Computer Separated Value. That's the way you collect data and store it in files,
Yeah,
because that's is what the data analysts like us use.
yeah,
We use CSV files, and that is what provides the fuel now for the AI to use.
yes,
So you see how the strong connectivity there among these two fields, data analytics and AI. But if you know this, we have to remember that the legislation is one of the biggest bugbears in all of this.
yes,
In fact, look, I was director of tourism in Tobago, and I never had access to travelers' information from where the destination, where they're coming from.
yes,
That metric by itself is so critical to collect. Let's say, most of my tourists are coming from Europe, UK, Germany, Scandinavia, and so on, and then the US and Canada, just 5 countries. But I cannot get that data to show how much. So I don't know how to plan with these airlines now, if you should add a second flight from Berlin or a third flight from Manchester or Heathrow, as the case may be, because they are telling us, me in Tobago, that, we can only release this data after 2 years. So how I can plan for my winter or the summer next year? These airlines and so on, you have to plan these things 6 months ahead. So
oh,
here's it. You plan it, you have to plan 6 months ahead, but you're taking 2 years to get that data.
yeah,
So I was able to get around this thing by actually sending a staff or two of mine to check every flight that comes in,
Hmm.
and have someone from immigration there who was a kind of good friend of mine releasing that data, but in an informal way.
Yeah.
So at least I can have an idea to say, well, you know what?
Yeah.
We have 80% more
Yeah.
people flying out to
Yeah.
UK. Let
And
me.
imagine so imagine if you had the real data. You know what I mean? How
This is the thing.
what
The
a
data does not lie. You see, this is the thing. And unless
yeah.
our biggest problem going forward right now is that data collection, that sharing of data, and the silos, and everybody feel they can hog that data for themselves. You know, this kind of typical mentality.
Yeah.
But more so, the decision makers need to understand that the data themselves, the parliamentary secretaries, the technical officers, the PS, and the ministers, and so on, the people up at the decision making level, if they don't understand these things, what you're talking about, exactly what I'm saying, how can they use the data when they even don't know the format and you know, when you develop your databases, how is it, you know, how is it to be stored and shared and this sort of thing?
Yeah.
So if they on the high end don't know how to use it or totally unaware, what do you expect?
Yeah. So yeah, I agree. And I think that the R&D departments of almost every ministry should actually begin to liaise. Remember, we talked about this interministerial
Yep,
sort of
yep.
connections
Mhm.
through the Ministry of Public Administration and AI. We talked about that in the first few discussions we had.
Yes,
So
yes.
the solution is really to have not necessarily an interministerial committee, but to have a system whereby certain ministries get together and in response to Gary's question, your research and development departments, your R&D departments, clearly need to get together in certain areas, use and share data, and of course, the Ministry of, I guess it will be Legal Affairs and the Ministry of the Attorney General needs to begin to assist in the drafting of appropriate legislation. One of the first pieces of legislation would have to come in the Ministry of Health, where you have a HIPAA type legislation
Yep.
that needs to be created in Trinidad and Tobago, because we have young doctors and radiologists and all this other things sharing information right now online on WhatsApp and all of these things, films moving around, doctors' records, I'm sorry, medical records, blood tests, X-rays, pertinent information moving around, and the ability of that to be get gone in the wrong hands for
Wrong hands.
any
Yeah,
other thing is very very high. So a lot of this has to be done properly using encryption and verification. All of these things have to begin with proper legislation, and these are some of the things that I think that, as you said, right now most of the guys are still assessing. Now I guess they reached the stage of gap analysis, and hopefully within the next 100 days they would begin to sort of look at some of the key dashboard requirements, and that they need to balance the dashboards. One thing is to do things that are politically correct at this point in time. Try to make sure you get your things sorted out. But some of the more fundamental institutional strengthening things that we are talking about, these are the longer term, right? Building of a proper governance system, and it will allow more resiliency and longevity in terms of staying in government for a longer period of time. These are some of the things that will make a difference. Improve these little sort of legislation, because you're talking about AI as the next, you know what the next best
it's
thing to happen to man, or whatever it is. That could be a fundamentally skewed discussion. But the fact is that you're saying that AI is important means that it is also important to support that with appropriate legislation. And I think that that is where we need to look at in the next few months to years. Yeah, maybe within a year, I think appropriate legislation has to be tabled, right? And I think as maybe they have a majority in government, I think it might be something that we need to push, fast, right? Of course, not stupidly. Of course, it must be carefully orchestrated and discussed, and a lot of people like yourself, Mr. Singh, and certain other persons need to come on board in terms of the going forward with respect to these very important pieces of legislation, because we are in the fourth industrial age, the age of man and machines, and we are here. We are here. It's not that we're going to be getting there. No, we are here already. So we need to start getting these things done. We have the opportunity now, and I am hoping that we get it very quickly.
Yes, because all that hinges that legislation, the legislative aspect of it is so important that you don't want to create biases, and the ethical considerations have to come into play. Exactly what the HIPAA law here is in Florida, I can tell you,
Yeah,
is a lot of patient records getting in the wrong hands of people, especially in the medical insurance area and so on.
yeah,
And suddenly someone knows that you have had a previous heart attack, so they're not going to insure you.
yeah.
You know,
But
these are like serious, serious HIPAA problems that
But,
we.
but the pre-existing condition nonsense, we have to deal with that in Trinidad to make sure that
Yeah,
that
but
doesn't take
the
place.
thing is that if we understand how Trinidad keeps records,
the,
Gary, you
look
will,
at what happened. Look at what happened with
everybody, everybody
Southwest.
knows your information.
Yeah.
Everybody knows your
Look at
I
information.
saw
the
some picture with
you
it
saw
looks like a garbage dump.
yeah, you
It
saw
looks
the
like a
pictures
garbage
of
dump.
the Southwest Regional Health Authority Medical Records Department. You saw the photo of the actual boxes strewn over there. I mean, I know they were hacked. There was some hacking, and I know that they were pretty much affected by that. So they had to go back to getting hard records and stop with the storage and using the virtual space for a while. But that in itself points to the fact that they were weak leadership when it came
Health, health
to
records
medical
management.
records
Yeah.
storage and use. It reveals. You see, it's not the boxes on the ground, it's the leadership. I mean, you might be looking at what the minister has to deal with now with these people complaining about the conditions and all this sort of thing, but it's not the problem is not them. The problem is the current board that actually still there. I don't know if they resigned as yet, but it's these are the people that are, and the CEO, whoever is it, they are the ones that are is the problem. The workers in the department is not the problem. They just use the tools that they have.
Yes, you have to have that leadership, that forward-thinking leadership. That's why I'm saying the same point. If the guys who are the decision makers, the ministers, the advisors, the AO5 and AO4, the technical people, and so if they don't know which action to take and what is necessary, our record keeping is so poor in all ministries. And that boxes you see there is not only in the southwest. You could go to Ministry of Education and you could see children data and so on in corridors as well, in boxes. So data collection, data storage, data privacy. Everybody knows everybody information. And this is the thing. This is the main problem. Even the banking sector, they knows how much money you have in your account. You remember the time they were holding up people and so on because they're telling you, we know how much money you have in the bank.
The bank employees are giving out the information.
Yeah, so this is how data. We don't look at data in that manner, in that serious way it's supposed to be treated. The privacy aspect of it, man, it is a big, big issue here, and for very good reasons. Nobody should know my personal data, or nobody should know my business, so to speak. But when everybody knows your business, what happens to you? You know, they can see you driving a Beamer, a BMW, or something. That's okay because they see you in that. But other than that, they should not know my blood type or what illnesses I have or what health insurance I have, what medical condition you have, and this sort of thing. So all the research and our R&D is so poor in all the ministries,
So
all.
how do you go about protecting patient information? Do you assign a number and not a name? And it only number only assign pulls up when it comes up into
No, well,
you know.
every number has to be assigned a name. So how we
Yeah,
know?
but I'm saying to you,
Yes,
is the name has to be encoded in a way that the normal not normally see?
yeah,
Can we do something like that?
encrypted. They can do it through encryption, and only they and they will know who, only
And
who
then
have access.
when you scan your health card, then it actually
Yes,
reveals.
yes, it's basically how these things operate. The QR code, like a QR code, the QR codes where you can just use
It is only revealed
well,
for us, the public only know it. The person working there is only knows it by a code, by a number, and not
yeah,
by a name. And then they can't tell who it belongs to
yes. So this is the thing.
unless
You
the
have a,
medical professional pulls it up.
yes, correct. So you see 007, hey, that's James Bond, right? But that is public knowledge. But what about 006? Do we know who is that? No. Okay. May have a QR code. You take your phone or whatever captured optical character recognition OCR machine you have to capture that. Then it reads it. Or they can have your eye print. Your eye, meaning your physical eyes. Your eyes have prints like the thumb, like a thumbprint, but you use eye prints and so. So there are different ways and different mechanisms you can use within the coded language. So these things are important, but that's our R&D is so poor. Research and development is so poor that we tend to collect what's called static data. And because we're collecting static data, past data, that has very little or not much use as collecting more dynamic data. And our decision makers need to understand these terminology and what they mean and how they can be interpreted in ways which are machine readable and so on. If you don't know these things, then you're making decision and you're not making it for the future. You're just making it today for today. So our data and research guys need to know what they're doing.
Yeah. I think that maybe as soon as they settle down, one of the main focus um, of the public administration and AI ministry would be to try very, very much to get this aspect of what we're supposed to be doing fast tracked. There are quite a lot of persons who could come on board at very low cost. In terms of trying to, like, you look at the medical records department at Southwest, I think they definitely need help. That department need to have some OJTs or something to come in. And quite a lot of young people now looking for jobs who are educated, coming out of university with their degrees. I think we should bring some of them quickly, right? Get a program, get some funding from some international agency when it comes to this, and try to see if we could get thousands of OJTs into the system very quickly. Um, if you have to create a good foundation of government, it is using data. It is information and data. I think that we need to get this data from every single aspect of every single service that we are going to be providing as a government, and try to use these OJTs now. And the primary focus would be to develop the R&D departments of every single ministry and agency related to government, and of
That,
course statutory authority. Have everything come under one single clearinghouse, with oversights, with security levels of how and who will be handling information, and begin now to pool information. And at the same time, while this is going on, create the necessary legislation that allows certain data sharing and data sharing protocols, which would allow security levels for certain types of data, particularly when it comes to crime and security, that is national security, so that levels of data sharing and persons who are authorized to handle certain data at certain levels would be able to access that data and use some of that data at higher levels of analysis and of course reporting. So I think this whole system has to be upgraded, strengthened, right? Quickly, so that the relevant decision makers would be able to get reasonably sound information, evidence based, right? They are able to use better tools when it comes to making decisions in terms of investments, uh, development, in terms of planning programs as they go forward, so that they don't waste money in doing things that are not required, and the data just doesn't show it. Um, that means that things that might be politically correct in certain instances might not be the right thing. So
Correct.
they're going to have to sit down and decide what is a mix. Clearly, you have to win votes as you go forward. So there's going to have to be a balance, in my opinion, because the culture wouldn't change tomorrow. It'll take a while. But once we have this foundation driven by data driven, evidence based, peer reviewed, right? Um, Benchmarking with international, global, and regional standards, adaptation with our culture, with our people, with our history, with our heritage. I think that you would have a government that will probably give you a 30 years, if you try to do it this way.
That's correct. But if you do it, what you have to think of the next 4 years again, 4.5 years.
Yeah.
Because if you see that you're making the right, decisions for the country, but it's not the politically correct decisions,
Yeah.
you find yourself out of government by 2030,
Yeah. So
and
there must be a balance, you see. So
everything,
it's a,
everything falls
it's a,
down at that point.
you see, that's
That's
what I was saying about the last time the People's Partnership was in government. Don't make the same mistakes twice. You did a lot of things that
excellent. Very
you
good.
were supposed
Yeah.
to do. You were
Yes.
supposed to build schools. That's what governments do. You were supposed to build a
Police
university. You're
stations.
supposed to bring hospitals. You know what I mean? You were supposed to fix roads, but it didn't win the election after. So clearly, other things needs to be, to balance. Yeah, you need to do them, but you need to balance them, and you need to do things that would win you the election, right? So it's
Because
a
the,
it's to find the right mix, right?
find the right mix, and there have to be legislation as well.
Yeah.
I keep on saying the same thing, but there, you know what countries like Singapore and do, Singapore and they do. Whoever wins the election has to carry on that 20-year plan or that 15-year plan down the road. So
Yeah.
that's how they measure for the next 5 years, how much of that plan you have implemented. So
Yeah.
nobody can come and say, okay, UNC win election now, they will come with their own plan. No, 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 no. That plan, original plan, is approved by both UNC and PN and whatever little parties they have. So that's a national development plan, So that is what will drive the country forward. In our case, in TNT, our plan just goes sideways. When one party wins, it comes with its own plan. When the other party wins, it comes with its own plan. So there's no forward momentum on anything. There's only sideways momentum, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, I
So
understand.
this is what. So legislation, if both parties are in agreement sometime during their lifetime that we need to build a better TNT, let's do a national development plan. So whichever party wins election will continue with this going forward.
Yeah.
So that's it, because we can't have When I come, I have my own plan. I scrap all your plans which you have, no matter how far completed. And I said, that's exactly what happened with the Children's Hospital, with the
Yeah.
Davie campus, with the school building projects. Look, you name it, and you can see what happened. But those five plans were scrapped altogether.
Yeah.
14 new schools were 75, 85, 90% completed and were never completed
Yeah.
after 10 years.
Yeah.
So once you don't have that continuity, they're never going to have any progress going forward. You only have progress sideways.
Yeah. So like that. That's what I'm saying. Is like it's what you have to do. Almost is you have to kind of tailor the suit, to fit the occasion in the sense that okay, so you have 4 more years instead of taking on 25 projects, which might not finish, or you might just get halfway there. It's probably better to take on 10, and finish it and put in the
And not
necessary legislation, etc., to make it sustainable so that nobody can come after, the last year of election, and when they win, stop everything that you're doing because it's not working, it's not completed, it's not in operation, if you know what I mean,
and you have to
so
prioritize what you're doing at the same
yeah.
time. Shows those that have the more people-centered focus,
Yeah.
that will benefit the masses of people more than 10% of the population versus 90% of the population. You do
Yeah.
those, or you select those as priorities which have a bigger impact on most of the population.
Yeah.
So
So we see here that Tobago was given some ambulance. Anyone knows
that's that's I've been following that very closely.
how these was outfitted, and I mean, what resources was placed together with these ambulance? Is it just a box cat with some flashing lights, or what's going
Yeah,
on?
in the last 10 years, I appeared for a CEO position in this RHA 4 times, 3 times, and I appeared for a medical chief of staff twice, of course, right? In this Tobago Regional Health Authority. So it's interesting. The first time I went for the interview, they gave it to a guy from Southwest who worked with me. Actually,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
he
yeah.
was one.
I know very good.
He one of the technical guys who worked under me. Well, not under me, but I was a executive medical director kind of thing. So he was one of the technical officers, and he became the CEO thereafter. I mean, I was interviewed, and obviously he got it. I don't know. I mean, he got it. He didn't last too long. I understand. He had to leave within a year, and somebody was acting there for many years before they re-advertised. I went back again. Obviously, somebody else got it. So when you look at how you put, I mean, I'm not afraid to say it. You put square pegs in wrong holes, you would find that you get these nonsense. I mean, clearly, this is a crime. I mean, these things are criminal acts. I think people have to be held accountable for these things. And
Well,
and and we have
I
to
look at
start
it
doing
as
it.
playing with the lives of citizens, and they're
Yeah,
playing
yeah,
smart with foolishness.
yeah.
But they think about it, there's no one to hold them accountable for all the
Yeah,
foolishness
and,
they've
and from
done.
the top, I mean, the board of directors, of course, I mean, there might be legal issues when it comes to a board, but the liability, etc., vicarious liability, etc. But clearly, heads, I mean, probably they're gone already. So, but the thing is that people have to be taken to account for this nonsense. I mean, it is terrible, and it can't happen again in this country. It should not. These are things that must not happen. Come on.
They have a new board there appointed this year.
Yeah,
Yeah, I follow the agency very close,
yeah,
as most things in Tobago already. So I know what's going on there.
yeah,
Why
So
I saw
at this point, what do we have here? masquerading as an ambulance? Is it just a box cat with some flashing lights, or there is equipment in there?
But they reported that both of them, both uh, of the three ambulances they have, and the pending fourth one, two of them couldn't come up the hill, drive up the hill. They couldn't go up. It's a place called In Hope. And I lived in Hope for a while, so I can tell you the
Looking
terrain.
at this vehicle, I mean, which country this was bought from?
I don't know. I think they said it bought from India. It was
Yeah.
sorry. It was refurbished in India. I don't know where they bought it from.
But that works out to be more than $1 million for a vehicle, eh? Because if you do the simple math, if it's what 18 million, is it 18 million TT dollars for 11 or 12 ambulances? So which means that it's more than $1 million for one, right? It's amazing.
So the article here is saying like 5 million here. I don't know, 535,000. I don't know if that is that for one ambulance, or how much, what's the cost there?
I am amazed. I had an ambulance company that I had formed for the World Cup, cricket when we had it in the Caribbean, and I bought Mercedes Benz ambulances, and the one ambulance totally fitted. Of course, this was many years ago. It didn't cost more than about 300 and something thousand dollars for a Mercedes Benz ambulance, with all the necessary Department of Transport regulations. Even that's what the U.S. standards. We brought our ambulance because at that time, Trinidad and Tobago, we didn't have, our standards were not as good as, but it was developed later. But I'm not sure if it's been enforced, right, in terms of our Ministry of Transport's standards for ambulances. And I think things like axles and the weights, and I mean there are certain specifications for ambulances. I mean, when you look
Yes.
at it, sometimes you get confused because it's so detailed. I mean, and so when I had to go through it, looking at for my company that I had formed, I went according to the specs. I think I mentioned earlier in one of the programs here that we talked about. We have look at what is happening with Red Cross. Red Cross in Trinidad and Tobago is under audit right now because
Yes.
they have there are a lot of issues related to stuff going on in Red Cross. So these standards that we're talking about, it's it's been it's been abused, and people would suffer. Clearly this is some corruption. Clearly this is, I mean, people getting money that they're not supposed to be having, and somebody has to do a forensic audit of where this actual money went.
And this is what I'm saying, Doc. With data, the data does not lie.
Yeah,
No one will take a chance when the data says this and you decide to do that.
yeah. An ambulance. I think an ambulance in Trinidad and Tobago, you could have a very good Mercedes Benz or a similar type vehicle ambulance, right, in accordance with the DOT of the United States or even Canada,
Hmm.
and you can have an ambulance on the road for about 800,000 TT dollars, fully loaded. And now at this point in time,
With all the medical equipment inside?
everything,
And,
ALS ambulance even,
And
and
where are
right
we
now you
buying that
can't.
from? Where are
Right
we
now,
buying it from?
right now you shouldn't even. No, we retrofit them in Trinidad. My ambulances were Mercedes Benz vehicles bought in Trinidad and Tobago, and I put everything in. We had people who
Oh,
came in and
oh,
we did
and
everything.
install it. Yeah, I mean your body equipment and install it into
Yes,
it.
yeah. You don't have to go abroad for people to do that. People, we did this. I swear to God, I had a company with 3 ambulances, and I did exactly that. You know,
That's good to know. At least
yeah.
I'm happy to know the fact that we
I
have
I
people
brought
that.
a paramedic in from Canada, and we had a paramedic system. What we did is we created a company, and what we did is we went around and we marketed the company. People were paying a monthly subscription of $100 to the company, and we had a paramedic, right, who was actually going to the calls. And I'm talking about under my supervision as the medical director, we were actually intubating people giving them medicine and taking them to hospitals in a packaged way that all they had to do was to, get them in and continue the management, and we saved many lives. And I wouldn't be ashamed to say that we did, because we were providing advanced life support care in Trinidad and Tobago at this point in time. We are now still providing basic emergency medical care, not intermediate even. When we started it with Hamza Rafiq, was the Minister of Health at the time, right? We've got the ambulances from Nova Scotia in Canada. I was one of the medical directors working with Dr. Rashid Adam at the time. He was the national medical director for the ambulance system. And together we developed the standing orders for the medical emergency medical technicians at that time, and those standing orders are still in place. When the system went over to GMRTT, right, the standing orders are still here. Of course, they updated some of them because they needed to be updated, but we did them, and I was one of the doctors who did most of them with Dr. Rashid Adam. And I was the South medical director when it came to monitoring, because the ambulance system started at the San Fernando Hospital under my supervision as the as the head of emergency department at the San Fernando General Hospital. And we were doing that, the forms and all the medical forms and things for them to come in. I mean, I was the doctor with who actually implemented that in San Fernando General Hospital first before it went national and Tobago. You see, so it it is. I'm talking here with a lot of experience when it comes to the ambulance system and in Trinidad and Tobago, and we started training the young EMTs, and we went basic, and we never upgraded to intermediate or or paramedic. In fact, the fire services, if you remember anybody here, the fire services had trained a lot of their fire officers to be paramedics.
Paramedic, yes, yes, I'm
So
aware of
they were better trained when it came to saving somebody's lives in Trinidad and Tobago, but they had no legislation and they had no medical standing order. They had no medical director support. So that whole system went down. I even recently suggested to the Honorable Minister of Homeland Security that he could probably look at probably upgrading the paramedic system in the new recruits, well, the new people that they brought into the fire services, and maybe that would be a way that the fire services can get more work, to do during the time that they're down, right? And that the ambulance system was pretty good before, and that we could train them up back to be paramedics, and hopefully have more medical doctors involved in the pre-hospital care system, so that you will have that medical cover. It's something that I think we obviously need to do very quickly, because if I get a heart attack right now in Philippines next to the boss here, I will be at the whim and fancy of a basic medical tech who will come to my home and basically, just speaking. I mean, my son is a doctor, so he might be able to put in some a tube in my throat and bag me. I mean, maybe give me some morphine and probably something to keep my heart going after he resuscitates it. But the average person would not have that luxury, and all you have is a guy who will come, or a girl, and they will just be squeezing your chest, because, as you know, we don't do mouth to mouth again. It's just squeezing the chest. So they will just come and squeeze my chest, get my heart going. But the problem
So
now,
there's no defibrillators and stuff like that available.
no, because there's no legislation. Two, there's no paramedics. So all they could do is just
What
compress my heart and bag
right?
me. That is, use an amber bag and take me to the hospital. Hopefully, I reach in time, so that when I get there, medication can keep my heart going. But if you get my heart going right now, in outside of the hospital, in one of those ambulances anywhere in the country, and you get the heart to beat, there is no way that you could continue that beating until you reach the hospital by medications or intubation and whatever.
yes. Doc, I had the luxury of riding with an ambulance. It was part of my training AI in healthcare. And I rode in the back and I really observed in detail how this thing works. And we picked up a patient here in North Miami. And from the time, now that was the fire service, eh?
Yeah,
Fire service, they are the first guys to come on the scene.
yeah,
And they had their paramedics. and they were in communication with the doctor at Mount Sinai, of course, and then they started the active communication of this is what, this is what, this is what. After they do a quick diagnosis of the patient, patient is still not moving here, feet is cold, or blah, blah, whatever the symptoms were, and so on. And right through on the journey from North to Mount Sinai in, South or in Alton Road there, is that there was constant communication with a team, or with the paramedics and the doctors at Mount Sinai. And at every 5 minutes or every 2 minutes, all the writers and things were constantly being checked, blah, blah, blah. And when we arrived at the Mount Sinai Hospital, ambulances normally have their own entrance, the back entrance, so to speak. The stretchers and everything was there. Within 2 minutes, the person was out of there and into a diagnostic room. And we had 3, 4 attendants as well as doctors. Yeah, there are always systems like that. They are on standby all the time, 24/7.
Well, the
So,
emergency room is fully equipped. We know that,
oh
and
yeah, not one, not one, only for one place for one ambulance. There are like 4 or 5 bays. Where the different ambulances coming and
I strongly think we need to recruit all these young doctors in waiting in Trinidad. They put them
yes,
or something to put them to work in training.
training.
Uh,
Yeah,
um,
it's
the EMT program needs to be reactivated
yeah,
as
yeah. I
soon as
as I
possible.
said, it's. I'm hoping that I mean, I'm hoping that once Lux settles, once the Minister of Health settles with his ministry, that we can hopefully sit down and try to
To discuss
assist him,
this.
in
Yeah.
getting some of these things sorted out. Hopefully, if given the chance, I mean, we can, because we did. I did it. I mean, I did it already. The pilot program for the ambulance system began in Southwest Regional Health Authority's emergency department, and I was the head of emergency department at the time. And when it was ready for rollout, it was at Southwest San Fernando General Hospital's department that we rolled it out nationally and in Tobago. It started with us. It started with testing all the systems at my department. I was in charge of the emergency department. It was my protocol. I had the doctors already trained in emergency medicine. We had started that program with Dr. Ian Sami from the University of West Indies, my colleague in my class. Well, he's the class lower than me in it's class of 85 in Mona, Jamaica. He was in the year below me, and he was appointed professor of emergency medicine at the University of the West Indies. And we began the emergency medicine training program for young doctors in my department, that is the San Fernando General's emergency department. We also began the injury surveillance system, the emergency department injury surveillance system. If you Google Dr. Stephen Ramrup Academia, whatever, you'll see that I had a couple of papers on emergency department, San Fernando trauma, setting up a trauma registry in Trinidad and Tobago, which we don't have. I left San Fernando Hospital in 2011 to go to the ODPM, and when I left, we had an injury surveillance system with the intention of nationalizing it, and well as setting up a trauma registry. We were already beginning to look at gunshot injuries increasing, gang warfare increasing. We were seeing trends even at that time in 2009 to 2011. We saw a number of falls. We had already spoken to the Ministry of um, uh, where, um, where the ministry that was responsible for things like microwave ovens exploding and all that. What was that? Consumer affairs.
Yes, yes.
Yes. And we were beginning to work with consumer affairs. They were looking at some of the data that we were producing, and we were recording about falls and accidents and appliances and whatever. And listen, I left there and then I became medical director for 2 years. I continued the program when I left, and when I left San Fernando to go to ODPM, I don't know what happened after.
I mean, this is something highly critical that we need to get off the ground as soon as possible. So, Dr. Ramrup, if I have to say something, I will, but I would encourage you. I mean, Dr. Pudu, you're on the ground there. So I would suggest sending him a message and say, hey, can we talk for a minute? And because he's overwhelmed with the amount of things happening around him.
And he
So
will be. And you know what is the sad thing
and
is that
I would suggest don't wait, to kind of
he
send him a
he
message.
will be out in fires in that ministry from now till the next 5 years, because the
Correct.
Ministry of Health
Correct.
is a ministry that I worked in. Lux worked in that ministry as well, right? I mean, I know the other boy worked, but I'm talking about Dr. Bodo knows exactly what it is, because he left and he went into the private sector. But he left, a few years before I got a good 10 years before I left. He was more private than I. I was in the sector longer, and I was at an administrative level. I was served as a medical director in the Southwest, as you all know, for about 3 years, and then I acted as executive medical director. I even acted as CEO a couple of times in that time when I was in Southwest, and I was responsible for working with the ministry in developing the accreditation standards, the national accreditation standards for Trinidad and Tobago. Right, we actually sat down, and I was one of the key persons in that workshop that drove a lot of those policies when it came to the development of the national accreditation standards. We began to do the other work in terms of the common procedural terminology that we were beginning. Then the guy that they hired, he took a set of money, he didn't deliver, and he left. He left and he went. So we did not get the CPT codes that we were supposed to get at the time. You understand? So, with all of that, the whole emergency medical pre-hospital care system never evolved. I mean, it never evolved from. I think they have started some intermediate training once, but I'm not sure when
I think he
Dr.
got
Ramrup, we
moved.
lost your voice there. I don't know somehow. Yeah.
Yeah, you heard me.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we
Okay.
had started some intermediate training, but we don't know where that reached. But we definitely need to get pre-hospital care is something that you guys know. I mean, Samaj, you talked about the ambulance. I mean, you guys live in North America, and you are so. What I should say, you are comfortable. In fact, you take it for granted, right? That if somebody comes to your home and you have a heart attack, or any one of your relatives, that they will be able to resuscitate you using a defibrillator, shock your heart,
Yep. Yep.
and they will be able to take the heart to the hospital. We have certain times, right, that we measure when it comes to metrics. Huh?
Yeah.
It's one of the metric is your home to hospital time, your door to needle time. Okay. Now these are times that are standard emergency medical
And every
pre-hospital care
second,
indicators.
every second that the brain
And
doesn't get blood
that's
and
what I'm saying.
oxygen
So
counts.
you have a ministry that has been working for what I left in 2011. Good. We implemented the system when I was there under Hamza Rafiq. That was when Basil Pandey, the late Basil Pandey, was prime minister. Right. That was introduced in his term of office. Right, when Hamza Rafiq was the minister of health. Check the time to now, right? And we have never heard in the public or anywhere anybody talked about door to needle time, right? The pickup to door time. All of these key indicators have never been brought to anyone in the public to say what our ambulance services have actually been doing since then. You know, and therefore these are things that we just talked about this man.
No
This
metric. The
data.
metric is not covered. The
Yeah.
metric is
So
not covered.
if we have to improve something, from what level are we improving it from?
Yeah. What's
And
the
therefore,
no baseline? You have
right,
no
in order to
baseline.
have that baseline, they have to begin that measurement now as we speak. Yes. And in order to do so, right, Saman, you
Yes.
have to have people who are like us, who have the necessary skills to identify the key performance indicators that they need to measure,
KPIs.
because not everybody could do it.
Everybody thinks they can do it, Doc. I know I went through this, what, 4 different occasions.
Yeah.
Everybody say, this, to start with, most of them are not strategic planners. You need to have a strategic plan, which is your output. You need to know exactly what results you want, right? So you work backwards from that point. Then you develop your metrics, then you develop your KPI. And you have to have that alignment now. Think of it as a straight linear line. KPIs have to go delve into metrics, then it delve into your output. What is it you want? If that is not in alignment, then you're going to bounce around with plenty of different combinations, and you don't know what the hell you're going to end up with. So people don't understand. If you don't understand the flow, the system, it's a systemic approach to things, solving problems.
Yeah, sorry about that. I dropped a bit. Yeah.
No, I say it's a systemic approach. Your KPIs have to, dovetail into your metrics, and that has to be dovetail into what your output is going to be. What exactly is your strat plan?
Yeah.
That's how you're achieving. It's a linear line.
Yeah.
From KPIs to metrics to achievable output. So,
well, we have already offered our assistance. So I guess now is just, as you say, Gary, is whenever they settle down, we could probably.
No, but what I would like to
it.
recommend, you on the ground there. So if I could initiate the conversation, or if you want, I mean, he knows you pretty well. I mean, so I would suggest that you
we have
message
been.
him.
We have, you see, over the last few weeks, I've deliberately not interfered with most of these guys because I know they're busy. And one of the things I have to be very careful going forward, I don't want to trip off anybody. That I don't want to make people, you don't want to. Is one good thing to try to help, but sometimes a lot of the persons would have their own ideas of what they are going to be doing.
correct.
So the trick now is not to go now and say, well, hey, I would like to talk to you about that. I'm afraid, Gary. I'm literally afraid because there are people around them now who will be pushing their discussions, and I think sometimes they would probably want to listen to them more because you're not there, you're not physically there, and you can't be there for a lot of reasons. So the trick now would be maybe, yes, I think you should initiate it.
No, I have no problem.
Yeah,
I am not afraid to
yeah.
initiate any
I am
conversation.
literally afraid. I have
Okay.
been
The thing
stung
about it
many
is,
times.
I find it highly critical. I know he would need the help.
Yeah,
And I mean, there's only so much a human being can do, even with all their good intentions and skills.
yeah.
But
But
knowing the fact of the nature of the situation in Trinidad and how
yeah.
critical it is for me to
Well,
jumpstart this
let me
thing.
give you a little perspective, huh? And I want you to. I mean, I know we're going out of time, but I just want to tell you what really happened. This is what happened. We had an old hospital, as you know, the old casualty. If anybody remembered it, we used to
Yeah,
drive up to the old casualty,
yeah.
right? Good. So when I came in from England after I'd gotten my fellowship, right, in the Royal College, in fact, I went to write the exam in Glasgow. I passed the fellowship exam there, and then I went to write it in Edinburgh, Scotland. I did the orthopedics, and I got the FRCS orthopedics. So I got my two. I am only one of two persons in the country that have I'm a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh, and a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons of Glasgow. Right. The only other person in Trinidad is a chap by the name of Mr. Ian Pear, Dr. Pear, an orthopedic surgeon like myself. And when I came back in, good, listen to me. There were people who were non-nationals, right, who were given my position as an orthopedic surgeon in the hospital. I was treated so unfairly. I was kicked to the casualty department, right, as a junior registrar at the time because they didn't want me to go into orthopedics, right? So when I went into casualty department, obviously, if you put a good man in a position, and I'm not afraid to say it, he will do his best, right? So I started to upgrade the department. Remember I told you about the problem with the nurses I had when everybody walked out? Yeah? So we improved that casualty, and I was put in charge of commissioning the operating theater, bringing that to level 1 trauma center. At the same time, UNC won the election under Pandey, Hamza Rafi became Minister of Health. They brought in the ambulance system, and as I just told you, I was one of the medical directors that actually implemented the ambulance system in Trinidad and Tobago using my department as the pilot program. Right? We developed with Dr. Rashid Adam, who is a neurosurgeon colleague of mine, we developed the standing orders for all EMTs that currently operate in this country, even now. We trained in the program, the EMT, I was one of the lecturers in the program. We trained EMT basics, and that system has never changed since I left it then in Trinidad and Tobago. So, which means that a lot needs to be done, and we have the experience. We did it, right? So, we can assist. After that, because of what I did, right, when they had the under 17 World Cup soccer with Jack Warner, remember that?
Yeah.
I was appointed as the medical operations manager to put into all the stadia, right, the emergency response of the physicians and doctors who would respond to any injuries on the field, right? When that was found out, when the PNM won the election after that, right, PNM saw me as a person who could have assisted because of my skills in getting all of these things done. And I don't know if you remember, right? The Minister of Transport at the time, right, put me on the Airports Authority board, right, as one of the doctors had died in the board, right, and I was put there. It wasn't a political appointment in a sense. It was in a sense, but it was to replace a medical doctor. At that time, the board was different, right?
I
So,
think that was in 2005 because we came
right.
down at the Airports Authority in Tobago that
Right.
time.
So
I was
Franklin can put me there because when the doctors went on strike, I was the head of casualty, right? And when Franklin brought his son who had gotten injured in very next to my beach house in Mayarada beach house next to Franklin's beach house, and his son was riding one of those bikes in the night, and there was a rope connected to a boat that he didn't see, and the bike overturned and he damaged his hand, including he had his sister with him. When they came into casualty that night, minister, they brought them down to San Fernando Hospital. No doctor was there, orthopedic doctor was there to see him. I sent him down to Southern Medical Center, I wouldn't call names, but the senior doctor who was on call at the hospital at the time refused to come out to Southern Medical because he was the doctor in hospital who was on strike too, right? So it would have been a conflict of interest to go and see Franklin Khan's children there. So what happened is that when Franklin Khan came back and he said, Dr. Ram, but aren't you an orthopedic surgeon? I said, yes, but I work out of Gulview Medical. He said, no. It's my children. I don't care about no conflict of interest or whatever. I need you to operate on my son. And it is in the operating theater in the night when I saved the hand and his fingers and all that sort of thing. That's when we developed a relationship and he put me on the Airports Authority board and I served there for nearly 9 years. I was in charge of the Operations Safety and Security Subcommittee with the people like the Commissioner of Police, Chief Immigration Officer, everybody reporting to me, right? And of course, the National Security Council Secretariat, a lady by the name of Joan Messiah. She was with me on that committee. You understand? So it was a public servant post because it was a public servant board at the time. 4 members were ex officio. No matter what government changed, those members would stay on the board. But then, of course, when PNM came, they changed up the format of the board and they made the Airports Authority board totally political. They removed the ex officio members. And then I was kicked out of the board. Okay? And of course, you know who did that. He was our last Minister of Finance in the Ministry of National Security. I'm sorry, in PNM, right? You know who that is. All right. So that is how now when they had the fifth summit of Americas, you remember that with Obama? Right. The PNM government appointed me as the medical operations manager. They put me as well in the local organizing committee for the International ICC World Cup. Right. I was sent for training, right, by the ICC. They trained me. I was sent for training for Fifth Summit of Americas. And I will show you, when I meet with you guys physically, I will show you a gift that I received from the US White House. I was the liaison officer for POTUS because it was the first time that Barack Obama was coming to an event after he won the election. For 1 year, I worked with the chief White House staff, right, in Trinidad and Tobago, right, to get POTUS ready to come here and to get things ready in all the hospitals. I wouldn't kind of tell you the kind of training that I undergo. I had to go to a Department of Defense military base, right, in America, and spend a week, right, trained up in some of the things that I was trained in. So the thing about it is that when I also had to participate in Shogam, you remember Commonwealth Heads of Government?
Yeah.
They
2000.
appointed
Yeah.
me as the medical operations manager for that as well. So I have, let me tell you something. I have so much knowledge, experience, and training, right, for the post that the Honorable Prime Minister, when she was People's Partnership, that I applied to go to. It was not a political post. There was an interview process, and I was interviewed to get there. Right? Of course, I had the support, but I was interviewed, and I passed my interview with flying colors. In fact, I remember Suraj Ramachan one day saying, "Doctor, you wouldn't believe how happy the Prime Minister was when she realized that the cabinet didn't have to do anything at all to get you there. You know what I mean? You did it on your own merit in your interview." So that position is a government official. It's a senior government position reporting to the permanent secretary. It doesn't report to the minister, you see, at ODPM. So this is why I think that it's, for me, I'm always scared when it comes for me to work with some of the ministers, because I am worried that sometimes they feel that I want to take over, or maybe I have too much knowledge, or whatever it is. So Gary, we have to proceed with care. And I would not mind doing it. As I said, I would love to get our system where even I am a 70% blocked in my main artery. They call it the widower's artery. Yes? And I could get a heart attack anytime in my little home here. And wouldn't I love to know that I am next to the boss, right? Think about what could happen. Think about what could happen. If something were to happen to me or the boss or anybody, even to the husband or anybody very close to each other here, right? It will take a basic ambulance, right? At least 15 to 20 minutes to get here. Okay? And they do not have the ability to put a tube down your throat, because they can't. They can't put up a drip to give you any medications to keep the heart alive. All they could do is to keep pounding that heart, to keep the heart going until they take you to the San Fernando General Hospital, which is like about 15 minutes away, 10 minutes by ambulance on a code blue. You understand what I'm saying? In 2025. And this is why I'm hoping that we can get this soon right and do it
I
fast.
want this thing done like yesterday, but you know, we took government, and I try to be reasonable, knowing that the fact that the amount of things they have to deal with. But at the same time, what I'm saying to you is, with the way I look at it, Dr. Rambo, is while Dr. Boudou is involved with whatever he's doing there, that you can assist him in putting
I
these
do it free,
things together.
free of charge. I don't even want money for that.
This is
I
what I'm saying. So I am going to initiate the conversation, and and see how it goes. You
Yeah,
know,
I mean, these are something that we can do without even thinking about reading a book. In other words, and it's so easy. And the trick is that,
I am
yeah,
fully confident you can do it. That's why, you know, I want to see
and
it
when I
done.
saw those ambulances, I mean, I cringed. I cringed, you know. I know Eli very well. Eli, we worked with, I don't know if you all remember, the Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister, had the children's Christmas treat that we used to go right through the country and give toys. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
The toy drive.
Mm-hmm.
Minister Eli was one of the persons who worked very closely with me and the Prime Minister, and and these guys. And we gave toys to almost every single part of this country. We used the stadia. I was in ODPM at the time, and I orchestrated the movement and logistics of all the PTSD buses that picked up these children from the remote areas and brought them in when I tell you, in such in such coordination that they will come to the stadium, get the toys, go up to the bus, and go back home, right? And this was done in almost every part of the country, right? So I know Eli very well because we work together, and he's now in transport. Very interesting. So there are certain things that has to be put in place to get our ambulances in terms of Department of Transport, in terms of and it's not reinventing the wheel, you know. These things are available. It's almost like cut and paste. I mean, it's so simple. The specifications in Canada is the same that specifications in the US with some little differences in terms of the legislation. But you know, it's Europe is the same. It's not a reinvention of the wheel, and it's not so in Trinidad. So in other words, then we need to start getting those things right. Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely, I saw that. I mean, I'm very strong about that. And you know, I lost my father like that, Dr. Ramrup, and this is
Oh.
what dragged me into politics. Right,
Mm.
Trinidad was not capable of assisting him, and they took an hour and a half
Wow.
to get an ambulance, and they did nothing when they came there. And you know, I started asking questions, you know, and one thing led to the other, and today this is where I'm at, you know, because I couldn't believe the health center was 5 minutes away, and we couldn't get an ambulance. They couldn't make up their mind to send anyone from Mount Hope or where. And, you know, it was a whole circus. So, you know, they decided to come back home there, and this is what was the result of you know, what taking place. So this is something I'm very passionate about. And as I started to get more involved, I discovered there were more chaos than I thought. No, and so this is something. I mean, I'm thankful that we took government and we on our way, but I don't believe that, you know, one person can handle all these things that needs to get done so urgently. So I deeply appreciate you offering to assist, and I think it should be taken upon, and let's run with it. And you know, let's see how it goes. Suman, you want to jump in here for a second?
No, no, I thoroughly agree with Dr. Amrup. I just thoroughly agree with him, and I am more or less in the same boat. I sent you an email, remember yesterday, Gary, to forward as well to the PM. So let's see how it goes. The disaster preparedness was one of the areas identified. There were 5 areas, and let's see how it goes, whether she will accept it or not.
Yeah, well, I hope so too. And I mean, it's clearly I mean, sometimes you know you say, well, let's wait, let's hold on and see, and let them get settled and get the things going because you don't want to bug them up with too much suggestions and whatever. But yes, I agree that maybe we could you could start by creating a conversation, and you know we could probably pull a team together to assist because they would have their team in the ministry. They will have a whole pre-hospital department. They have the contract with the provider. I'm not sure who it is right now, but I know when I left it was GMRTT, which was a American company. I knew the CEO then very well. I'm not sure who is the CEO now, and I'm not sure what advancements were made in the last 15 years when it comes to ambulance services. I know when the People's Partnership left, they were actually starting the intermediate, and I know that they were looking at they had trained. I think they were doing some training to get some of the paramedics. Obviously, when People's Partnership lost the election, it seems that everything just either stopped or didn't go forward. So yes, it will be interesting to find out what were the developments over the last 10 years. That will be done be now. I'm sure Minister Bodo will be doing that now in terms of his assessment of where the ministry is. I know pre-hospital care will be top on the list, so I know that he would have had some information already. So if we bring up the topic now, I guess he would have already had some discussions with the ministry about it. So he'll be in a better position to say, well, okay, this is the situation. Give me a few weeks again. Let me just check, get a total analysis of where we are, and
Right,
then
but
maybe
yeah,
we could,
you could
you
do
know,
some things in the meantime while he's
yeah,
handling his business. So I
yeah,
forget pretty much that I understand that he's very busy. I
yeah,
clearly understand the nature of things.
yeah.
But what I'm saying that there's nothing wrong with more help at this point.
Right. Well,
You know,
I'll leave that up to you. As I said,
well,
tread carefully and
I
yeah.
already initiated the conversation. So
Yeah. So let's see how it goes. As I said, it doesn't take
yes.
anything out of me because that is something I can do in my spare
No,
time.
I mean,
It's
and
so
listen,
easy. Yeah.
it is something both of us are passionate about.
Yeah.
We know it's
Yeah.
absolutely necessary,
Yeah.
but it don't make sense to me
Yeah.
that you sit in here waiting when the
Yeah.
help is needed,
Yeah. Well,
and it's not costing the country any money because you this is pro bono
I
because
think the
you have an interest in
I
it.
think the opportunity is ripe. I mean, that's one of the reasons probably why I came on again. I made some time because I wasn't feeling so well up to yesterday. But
Yeah,
you know,
you jump in anytime we talking,
yeah,
Doc.
I am.
You know, whenever
I
you
when I
no
saw
feel
the
able.
ambulances, I think
Yeah.
the opportunity is ripe because that is topical. So it just means, therefore, that if you had a proper system working, that could have never happened because although Tobago Regional Health Authority has a certain amount of thing under the Tobago House of Assembly reporting to the health secretary there, right?
Mm.
A certain amount of reporting has to be done to Trinidad and Tobago, right? In terms of that, right? In terms of vehicles, in terms of Ministry of Transport and the requirements for certain vehicles to go on the road and to be inspected by inspectors of transport inspectors, right? And these vehicles, when they landed in the country, they should have been checked, right? So these are certain things that even before they were retrofitted and they had to spend more money to them, these vehicles should have been checked. Just like you check a vehicle coming in and before you buy it off a firm, right? And these vehicles are checked at the port and they are checked, in licensing before they give you the license and they give them a certified copy, right? These are the things that I'm very interested, as I said, finding out what really happened and a forensic audit of what really went on. So this is why I think it's a good time, Gary, to bring up the whole topic of pre-hospital care. And it's not just
Well,
the patients, it's the
we had this
ambulances, the
discussion
whole
on
thing.
this program
Yeah,
with Dr. Budo and Dr. Gopi Singh. I mean, in all pre-election period. I mean, this is
yeah,
something I'm very passionate
yeah.
about,
Good.
and we have some good people like
Right.
Dr. Gopi Singh who will always available to
Yeah,
advise.
right.
Because he's fully experienced, he's internationally experienced like yourself.
Yeah.
He's a little more senior than yourself, but
Of
I
course, he was
mean,
my lecturer in university.
right, right. So, but I mean,
Yeah,
he has this thing at the back of his hand, and
yeah,
all we have to do is to engage his assistants.
yeah,
So, between yourself, Dr. Gobi Singh, as support
yes,
for Dr. Budu
yeah,
in this is, I think, is absolutely necessary. We provide all the possible support so that we can have a better delivery to our country, our people, and
yeah,
our government will be in better standing.
yeah.
So I
So it'd
mean,
be nice
it's
because you
not.
have the topic of discussion with the ambulances in Tobago. So that could initiate it in the sense that, hey, I mean, this is what I've seen, and this system needs. We need to start checking this whole system nationally now. So I think it's a very very opportunistic time to deal with one of the most important aspects of healthcare in Trinidad and Tobago, especially with our
Definitely, and it
Asian
means it's a
population.
big deal to especially us outside the country.
Yeah,
But the fact that I watching every day people getting shot, the accident, people are driving so crazy.
yeah,
They are flying off the simplest road
yeah.
and flipping over. And look, we had four people die, a
Yeah.
parent
So it,
and the
it
young
actually
child.
listen, it hones in to the very heart of emergency care. And I'm hoping that you can also bring in the Minister of Homeland Security because the fire services should also be part of this discussion because they have a very important role to play because normally they are the first people on the scene with the police. All right. And as you can, and I mean, Samant, in Canada, in the United States, fire services, right? They land in the scene with all the equipment and whatever, right? And they have amazing training. So I am hoping that when we now go now to look at this pre-hospital system that the UNC is going to begin to upgrade and improve within the next 3 months, within the next 3 months, I am hoping that the fire services are actually going to be part of that training as well with the people that he brought on, okay, as well as the EMTBs, who some of them we identify the ones to go on to intermediate and whatever, and we can even use the DB campus to do some of the training. So all of these things are, and I am saying all of these things are possible, and I think that you will be the one to actually initiate it because I want to stay out of it. until you get some answers and some
Yeah,
agreements.
I don't waste time.
Yeah,
I conducted the message while we talking here. So
yeah.
you know me, Doc. I don't
I
play.
know you from long, so we
I
we'll
don't
see
mix
how it
matters.
goes.
Yeah, so I mean, I
Okay.
initiated the conversation. I am looking forward to us getting this because I said, as far as I see, every second counts here for me because I mean, we have things happening on a 24-hour basis in the country here. People getting shot, people getting killed. I mean, all different issues are taking place. The trauma center needs to be up and running. We have doctors sitting on the wayside that we could pull in and work out something with them that
I don't
they
want to
get.
make statements, but if you have a
Well, I am making
four
this
people
statement. I
dying
mean,
in an accident, right?
yeah.
In this day and age, right, with a pre-hospital system that is basic life support, I would expect that. I would expect that. If you had a ALS life support, we might have been able to save the child or somebody else. So I
But,
really
eh,
feel that we need to do something. Okay?
but I mean, you travel back and forth. You know what the deal is here in the US and Canada. And if we
Yeah.
make a call, if we make a 911 call, the police reach first, and
Yes.
the police comes equipped with life-saving equipment, and the
Yeah.
EMT and the ambulance comes. They are together. I mean,
And,
I mean, I've seen situation where I had 10 or 11 guys, showing up.
yeah,
So
that,
I
that
mean,
that's
accident
another
takes
thing.
place. You
That's
know.
another thing. In Trinidad and Tobago, you have to call 990 999 511 1-800-411. So as
Yeah.
soon as
So
possible, you have to
all of
get to
this thing we
911.
have to fix.
911, one number. Jesus,
Yeah,
one number.
uh,
God.
and and then and it's done with.
Yeah.
So this is something has to be fixed. I mean, 20 years ago or more than that. But
Yeah, we were doing
so
it, in 2015 when we lost the election. We were so close to getting that 911 system up,
right.
right? And we
So
already started training paramedics and intermediates.
right,
So it just went in the last 10 years.
right. So let's see how it goes. I am persistent. I stick to it, and it's something we all are passionate about here, and it's absolutely essential, especially those of us who have gotten used to seeing effective response in emergency care. And these are the things that really keep us out of the country. You fix the crime and the health care.
Yeah.
I mean, if visiting the country, you want to, you're visiting the country where you kind of tiptoe in because what if happen? What if that happen? You don't have the proper care and the response, and there has to be an attitude adjustment to that. I mean, the mindset around a lot of people. There's a lot of I've seen a lot of arrogance and with all some kind of attitude, and that has to I mean that has to fix.
Yeah.
Where we work, hand in hand with each other, and
Yeah.
trying to have a different kind of attitude at how we work with each other. I mean, I've seen
No, you're
people,
correct. You're correct. I mean,
I mean,
I don't even want to discuss some of the things that people have to start changing the culture about. So
yeah. So
it's
there
just
has to be there's a
yeah,
cultural change has to take
yeah,
place together with all the
yeah.
academics
I mean,
and things.
we could only help so far, Bill. But if people themselves don't do some introspection, I think we'll
Well,
just
there
yeah,
has to be, far as I see, if you don't hold people accountable for their behavior,
yeah,
it's not going to fix. There has to be an administrative, how to say, understanding that that governs these things. When somebody make a complaint, investigate it, you take action, you don't push it aside. The people that's getting that the complaint is being made against, you don't go in your rum shop and drink with them after work. This kind of thing, because then it's all the buddy kind of system. And but like I say, work is work, and these are lives being in danger. We are losing
yeah,
people by the minute in the country because things are not in place unnecessarily. And I mean that for me is totally unacceptable.
yeah.
So
I agree. I agree.
so thank you very much, gentlemen, for taking the time. And Dr. Rao, it's always open here. As long as you can spare the time, jump
Yeah,
into the conversation whenever you can. So,
sure.
Mr. Singh, you have anything you want to add?
No, it's fully endorsed what has been discussed tonight. I've been through this a couple of times on 4 different occasions, but between 1986 and now. So I know exactly what they expect from new ministers and what they expect from the existing staff. And I
Well,
can foresee the problems that they're coming into, especially the younger ministers who are with zero experience of dealing with senior level staff in ministries and so on. So I keep my fingers crossed. I'm positive about things, but it's just the way the system is configured. It will lead to unnecessary drawbacks, and with all good intentions you may have from these ministers and so on, there is and there will be opposition to stagnate any sort of development. If you get 1 or 2 projects completed, thank God you can say yes, you achieve 1 or 2. But I foresee difficult times going ahead, and let's see. But
well,
I
I
wish,
see now our Minister of Local Government, she's full throttle ahead. Our Minister of Works is full throttle ahead. We've seen the collaboration between the Agriculture Ministry, they're working out and sorting the flooding. We've seen councillors
yes,
uh,
yes,
working overtime. We've seen our Minister of Social Development working over the weekend. And, so we know that they're working.
they
And like
are
I said,
working. I
we
agree.
are here to provide the additional support because they need
Yes,
all the extra help possible.
they
There's a
are.
flyer up here for shelter management training, and in the various constituency, Arima and Sandy Grande, and I've seen here June 7th, and then Central they have same
North.
thing too.
Yeah,
Yeah, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Same thing in the north, 9 a.m. and also let's see, June 8th in the south, 9
next
a.m.
week
to 3 p.m.
Monday. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, we've seen things happening. We know the people that's there, but like I said, there's nothing wrong with more help when you're fighting war. You know,
Absolutely. The
they
thing
need
is that
all the help possible.
the thing, Gary and Doc, is that all the systems in Trinidad is broken. All of them. All. Name me
Yeah,
one that is working.
yeah.
And in some ministries, the ministers will take more than 5 years just to clean up, just to put it in the right order if you want to achieve your plans. So then again, what is the challenge there? You have the challenge of, do you want to remain in government for the next 5 years, or do you want to set the record straight and put the system get the back end going of all the ministries? That is going to take time, and then on top of that, there will be public agitation. There's public agitation from employees who has started clamor for the 10% and this and that. They will be clamoring for non-delivery of promises. So you have to deal with that as well. And
Well,
that's why I'm saying the system is broken, boy. Dr.
one
Moore,
of the things I want people to understand here, and we have to reiterate it, the Prime Minister made certain promises. She's she has to do certain work and put certain things in place before she can deliver those promises.
yes,
The damages are very severe to our economy. We have to sort of, you see where Khadija was talking about, um, it's more money missing than she thought it was. You
yes,
understand? In the corporation, and they're not answering, and they know they will refuse, and they will do all kind of song and dance with that, right? So
everything
we
to
know
this plot.
we know that is happening, right? So I mean, she got more than she bargained for in dealing, in the sense that she dealing what's more unnecessary things that she should be dealing with. Let's
Correct.
put
And
it that
this
way.
is what will come up over time. They will say, oh, the
Right.
problem is much bigger than we thought. Come year 2, year 3, as they go deeper into this administration of the ministry, the problem is systemic. It's deep down inside, it's deep rooted.
So we have a lot to sort out,
A lot
right?
is sorted. And this is what I'm saying. These new ministers, I'm not too sure what is their capability of, getting things going or they understanding how the public service works and how their senior executives work in the ministries, and they will do everything in their
Well,
power to
I'm sure they're
frustrate.
going to get some guidance, but what I'm saying to you is, we are here to provide the support.
Correct. And we are here to provide the assistance if needed.
We
To
are
let
not
them
here to
know.
take over anybody's job. We're
No.
not looking for a job. I'm
You see,
comfortable where I'm at. I'm trying to arrange
they
support.
same on with me, but they will
Yeah.
think that you trying to supersede them or you will just more intelligent than them. This guy going to take my job. Let's stagnate it. All
Yeah,
these kind
no.
of petty balance
Yeah,
issues
yeah,
come
yeah.
up.
Listen,
No,
man.
and
Yeah, yeah.
this is
So
why I'm
anyway, yeah.
saying.
So
I hope that we can get a chance to help the present government. Just help them. Because this is a time when the help is needed. And if we can't do it now, I don't know 10 years from now what the situation is going to be like if we're around, you know.
right. So
So
thank you
that's
very
it.
much, gentlemen. We'll catch up tomorrow night. Did Dr. Ramu, if you have any few minutes tomorrow night, you could jump in.
Sure, sure.
Uh,
Yeah.
all right, and let's see how it goes. So, gentlemen and our listening audience, thank you very much, and I would say good night at this point.
Take care,
We have a
everybody.
message. We have a message
Okay,
from
guys.
Senator David Naked. I'm going to
And
throw that in now.
youth affairs, youth empowerment, youth development. When you're talking about that, you have to make sure that you have the linkages. You have to make sure that you have those gaps filled. Okay, we all want and we know the interests of our citizenry of developing the youth through sport. Why? It mitigates against rising crime, low unemployment. It gives you a certain discipline structure, all of that to be model citizens. Yeah, but how do we establish those linkages? The first thing we must have is bring it back down to the schools. In our policy vision, you'll see that we have a central part to play with the schools and with community. So first and foremost, you must have fields within the community that make sense. We like to talk about we have a lot of stadia, but mostly that is for the high end, the high performance athletes, national programs, and that is good. Most of them built and maintained, lights put up by the UNC. Okay, now we're in a position now to really try and link, synergize youth and sport. So I'll give you an example. This behind me here is an example of what a community field in Trinidad and Tobago will mostly look like. Look at that. And people say, well, we are ahead. In every community we have lights and we have a field, but look at this field. What football, what technical level we can expect of our young players to get up from this field? All they could get here is hard tackle, ball bouncing up, and don't tell me we produce players from fields like this. We have. That is not because of fields like this, it's in spite of fields like this. So the vision must be to have fields across the communities where schools have access to those fields in order to increase the technical and participatory level in all communities with all schools. And I'm not talking only about football. Look at that. We're talking about all sports because this field here, for example, if it was well maintained, we have cricket, we have football, we can have hockey. So the idea is to have fields according to the Belgian model or any first world country that advance their youth through sport is to make these all-weather fields. Now we train this out in light of what is our framework to make sure that we have a policy vision with continuity. Because what we could do is come and fool people like Shamfa Kajo and have one set of events, put one set of names on it, have it in Skinner Park, which is not a good field by the way, or have it in somewhere, some other field, in some stadium, at Tobolan, or wherever, and it's just an event. Everybody go home after, everybody feeling good, but there's no continuity. We intend to change that. The Minister of Sport is hands-on looking at all the facilities across the country, and we intend to bring it home in these years under Kamala Prasad Bisasa to really have a policy vision and policy implementation that gives us the guarantee and the assurance that for generations to come, our youth will be well served. Trinidad and Tobago, the General, loving the house all the time.
Okay, good night, everybody. See you tomorrow night.